Hey, you okay? Hang in there.
My husband, John, became unconscious in the bathroom while bathing with our daughter. This sudden incident had me in a panic. No matter how many times I called out, there was no response from him.
I'm gonna call an ambulance right now.
Seeing John collapsed in front of me, I was shaken and my hands trembled as I tried to dial for help on my phone. The worst possible scenarios kept flashing through my mind. Taking a deep breath, I was about to make the call, when my daughter said something shocking. "We should just leave him, who cares? Let's get a divorce already."
What are you saying? At a time like this?
I couldn't believe she was joking at such a critical moment. And suggesting a divorce, what was she thinking? Even though she was my daughter, I was so upset that I raised my voice at her. But she looked so serious, it didn't seem like a joke at all. Could she actually be serious? Divorce? Why would you say something like that? Well, you see. Her words sent chills down my spine. I never imagined there could be such a reason. She looked me straight in the eyes and said again, "Got it? Let's get out of here quickly." Silently, I nodded and hurried out of the house with her. My name is Karen. 35 years old. Currently, I work part-time in the mornings at a local pharmacy. Ah, you're back. You must be tired. Mom, welcome home. It was a day off, and I had left the kids with John. When I got home, the two of them greeted me with smiles. I met John, a pharmacist, back in high school, and we reconnected at a reunion, which led to us dating. After 3 years together, we got married. He works hard, often staying late at work, especially since we had our daughter. But he always prioritizes us, no matter how tired he is. I'm constantly grateful for him. Lily, were you a good girl and listened to your dad?
Yes.
Our daughter, Lily, just started first grade this year. Her constant cheerfulness lifts my spirits, and I forget all my troubles when I'm with her. How about we make your favorite hamburgers for dinner tonight?
Really? Yay! Dad, did you hear? We're having hamburgers tonight.
Watching her overjoyed reaction, I began to prepare dinner with a smile. However, within an hour, I started feeling increasingly unwell. Uh-oh. I've got a headache. Having been frail since I was young, I often fell ill. While enduring the pain in the kitchen, John noticed and came to my aid.
Hey, are you okay?
Yeah. I'm fine. Even if you say so, you look pale. Maybe you should rest? Maybe, but Lily was looking forward to dinner. No need to push yourself today. You can make it tomorrow, right? John suggested that, and despite feeling sorry for my daughter, I decided to take a rest. Lily, sorry. I'll make it tomorrow. Mom, are you okay? Lily can wait until tomorrow, no problem. Oh, that's right. As I was about to return to my room, Lily seemed to remember something and hurriedly went to John. I wondered what she was up to. When she came back to me, she had medicine and a glass of water in her hand.
This is Dad's magic medicine. Take this and get better.
Thank you. With this, I should be better by tomorrow. I was so grateful to have a pharmacist husband at that moment. He always prepares various medicines for me, knowing my frail health. Surrounded by my kind husband and daughter, I felt so blessed. With these thoughts, I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, when I woke up, my headache was gone, and I felt completely well. Going to the living room from my bedroom, I found that John and Lily were already up.
Ah. Mom. You're feeling better.
Thanks to Lily, I'm all better. As I chatted with my daughter, John, wearing an apron, brought breakfast.
Your color looks good, seems you're okay. But, you have the day off, right? Rest for the day, okay?
Okay. Thank you. I'll take it easy. All right, then I'm off to work soon. John took off his apron and headed to the entrance. Lily and I followed to see him off.
Dad, have a good day at work. Sure. I'll do my best.
After this exchange, we bid John goodbye as he left for work. I felt so lucky to have such a wonderful husband. I thought about how our happy life would continue like this. I was lost in these thoughts, basking in the contentment of my life. But at that moment, I had no idea that this happiness was about to be abruptly shattered. 30 minutes later. After dropping Lily off at school, I returned home and was relaxing in the living room, watching TV. I had no work today, so I decided to take it easy as John had suggested. I felt a bit guilty about yesterday, having caused trouble for both of them. I let Lily down too. Suddenly, I thought about how I was always troubling John and Lily, and decided to make a slightly more lavish dinner as a token of my gratitude. I started preparing dinner for midday, but got a bit carried away, making enough food to look like it was someone's birthday party. Oops. I might have overdone it a bit. With these thoughts, I continued preparing dinner and then went to pick up Lily and returned home. The moment she entered the house, she started shouting joyfully.
The food smells amazing. What's for dinner today?
Lily burst into the living room, tossed her backpack aside, and scurried towards the kitchen. Today, I made the hamburgers I couldn't make yesterday, and Dad's favorite fried chicken.
Wow! Yes!
She must have been really looking forward to it. Watching her jump around with joy, I couldn't help but smile. With Lily's help, we finished preparing dinner. Let's eat when Dad comes back. I decided to wait for John's return with Lily. Lily, too, was eagerly awaiting her dad. But even at the time he usually returns, John hadn't come home. Dad's late, isn't he? Yeah. I'm hungry. Eat first? No. I want to eat with Dad. Lily said, looking down. What could have happened to John? He's usually home by now. The clock had already passed 8 p.m. I felt bad making Lily wait any longer. Just as I was about to message John that we'd eat first, I received a message from him. A junior at work is really struggling with something. I've decided to have dinner with him and listen to his problems, so I'll be home late. Sorry. He could have told me earlier. Although I was internally upset about the sudden change, John has always been kind to everyone. He probably couldn't ignore his junior's troubles. Lily, Dad's going to be late today, so let's eat first? Really? Okay. When I told Lily about John's late return, she looked quite sad. But it couldn't be helped. If we kept waiting for John, who knows when we'd eat. After finishing dinner with Lily and putting her to bed, it was almost midnight. I'm home. That's when John quietly came back, trying not to make much noise. He didn't seem to have been drinking. Welcome back. How was your junior? Well, he's okay for now, but I've decided to help him with work for a while, so I might be coming home late every day. At the entrance, John said that. He already has a lot of overtime and comes home late, and now it's going to be even later? I understand that his junior is important, but I wish he could come home earlier for us. I wanted to say this to him, but he's working hard to support me and Lily, so I couldn't say anything more. That's so. Today, Lily was trying hard to wait to eat dinner with you. But it's work, can't be helped. Is that so? I'm sorry. How about this Sunday? I'm off work, and we could go to the amusement park as a family for a change. I think Lily would love that. I'll tell her tomorrow. Oh. Here, let me take your jacket. Thanks. I just wanted to jump into the bath quickly. I'll go take a shower now. The moment I took his jacket, I smelled a scent that was unfamiliar to me. This smell. It was like a woman's perfume. I never wear perfume. For a moment, I doubted John, but then thought it might be my imagination and didn't think more of it. And then, on Saturday. Tomorrow we're going to the amusement park, right? Yeah. Are you excited?
Yes. Excited to play with Dad. Then, let's go to bed early today so we can enjoy tomorrow, okay? Okay.
After that heartwarming conversation, Lily and I saw John off. After he left, while relaxing in the living room, I suddenly remembered that we might be running out of groceries. I had used a lot this week, so we needed to restock. Since there wasn't much else to do that day, I decided to go grocery shopping with Lily. As I browsed the store, looking for any special deals, I was approached by Mrs. Johnson, a mother of one of Lily's classmates.
Oh. Isn't that Karen? Long time no see. Ah. Yes, it's been a while.
After a brief greeting, we started chatting, but after a while, I heard something shocking from her. Mrs. Johnson looked around nervously, then leaned in and whispered. I don't know if this is appropriate to say in a supermarket, but isn't your husband working with a young woman? No, I haven't heard anything like that. I hope it was just my mistake, but I saw them the other day. Saw what? I couldn't believe what Mrs. Johnson was saying, but having heard she saw it with her own eyes, I couldn't help but be concerned. When I asked, she continued slowly. I saw them coming out of a cafe near the station, arm in arm. No, not my husband. He wouldn't do something like that. I was stunned, my mind went blank. It must be a mistake. Yes, it has to be. I kept denying Mrs. Johnson's words in my head over and over.
Karen. Are you okay?
Yes, I'm fine. It must be a mistake, Mrs. Johnson. You're funny. Yeah. Your husband wouldn't do such a thing. He seems so honest. Sorry for saying something so strange. Don't worry about it. See you. We parted ways there. I continued shopping with Lily and went home, but my memory was hazy. No matter how much I tried to convince myself that my husband wouldn't do such a thing, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Back home, I was struck with a headache from the shock of possibly being cheated on and the belief that he wouldn't do such a thing.
Mom, are you okay?
Yes. I'm fine, sorry. If Dad were here, he could give you some medicine. Why don't you rest until he comes back? I decided to take advantage of my daughter's kindness and let myself rest for a while. I get sick so easily over little things. I really hate being so frail. I was thinking about this, but before I knew it, I had fallen asleep. When I woke up next, there was a nice smell in the air. Oh, you're up? I was greeted by my husband, who noticed I had woken up. It seems he made dinner for me instead. Huh? Weren't you supposed to work late today? Lily called me. She said Karen wasn't feeling well. So I hurried back. I see. I'm sorry. That's obvious, right? We're family after all. Indeed, a family man like him would never betray us. Having experienced his kindness anew, I was convinced that what Mrs. Johnson said earlier was a lie.
Mom, are you feeling better now?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm fine now. By the way, about tomorrow, I was thinking of canceling our trip to the amusement park after talking with Lily. Really? But Lily was looking forward to it so much.
It's okay, Mom. Take your time to rest.
Instead, I was thinking maybe we could go to the park tomorrow. So that's what it was. I'm sure my daughter must have been really wanting to go to the amusement park. But I couldn't waste her kindness, so I decided to take it easy tomorrow as well. Here, eat this. I mixed in some supplements to make the symptoms a bit milder, so I think it'll help you feel better. My husband said that as he served the stir-fried vegetables. When I tried a bite, it was a bit bitter, but not so much that it was hard to eat. Thank you. But I'm not really in the mood to eat much right now, so I'll just eat what I can. All right. Well, it won't spoil right away, so if you can't finish it, eat it tomorrow. After saying that, my husband headed to the bathroom. Then, I couldn't finish all the food and ended up leaving about half, which I put in the refrigerator. He had said it was okay to eat it tomorrow, so I thought I would do just that. With that in mind, I also took a bath and headed to the bedroom. A few hours later. What's this, such a headache? I was suddenly struck with an unprecedented headache, followed by a severe wave of nausea. Unable to hold it in, I rushed to the toilet and managed to get through it, but what could have been the cause? Today, everyone ate the same things, yet there was no sign that my husband or daughter had woken up. Oh, wait. I remembered my husband saying he had added supplements while serving me dinner. It was probably some kind of side effect. But, being a pharmacist, he wouldn't use anything that could have a serious impact on the body. It must have just been something that didn't agree with me. After spending some time in the toilet and vomiting until my stomach was empty, the nausea completely subsided. The next day, feeling completely better, I decided to make lunch for the two of them who were planning to go to the park. I remembered there were leftovers from yesterday. Even though I felt it would be rude not to eat what he had prepared, I was scared to eat it because of what happened last night, so I decided to put the leftovers in the lunch boxes for my husband and daughter. Good morning. Good morning. As I was making lunch, my husband and daughter woke up. After serving them breakfast, I handed them each their lunch. Here, take this with you. Eat it for lunch, okay? Thanks for making it. We'll be off then. They said and left for the park. They would probably be back by evening. I wasn't feeling bad anymore, but there wasn't much to do. After a light cleaning of the room, I went back to the bedroom and fell asleep. A few hours later, when I woke up, it was already late afternoon. It was about time to get up. With that thought, I went to the living room, where my husband and daughter had already returned.
Welcome back. How was it?
I asked Lily, but she didn't seem very responsive. What could have happened? She was so looking forward to going out with her dad. Karen, you put that stir-fry in the lunch, right? Maybe she didn't like that. You know, Lily doesn't like vegetables. Indeed, Lily had only taken one bite of the stir-fry at dinner last night. Feeling sorry for leaving it out, I had included it, but maybe that was a mistake. Lily, I'm sorry, okay? You don't like vegetables, right? I apologized to my daughter, but she just shook her head and didn't say anything. I wonder what's upsetting her. Without knowing the cause, there's nothing I can do. I figured her mood would improve if I left her alone for a while. Thinking this, I decided to start preparing dinner and headed to the kitchen. Then, Lily grabbed my clothes. Is something wrong? What is it? Well. Just as Lily was about to say something, my husband picked her up and carried her off.
Today, how about taking a bath with Dad for a change?
Okay. I still had no idea what Lily was trying to say. Well, it probably wasn't anything serious. Deciding to focus on dinner, I began to cook. 30 minutes later. Crash. A loud noise suddenly came from the bathroom. It wasn't the sound of something being dropped, but something bigger, unlike anything I'd heard before. What happened? I quickly turned off the stove and rushed to the bathroom. Opening the door, I saw my husband lying on the floor, completely limp.
You okay? Hang in there.
I was in a panic over the sudden turn of events. No matter how much I called or shook him, my husband didn't respond.
I'm calling an ambulance right now.
While I was trembling and trying to pull out my phone, thoughts of the worst possible scenarios flooded my mind. I took a deep breath to calm down and was about to dial, when my daughter said something shocking. It doesn't matter about him. Let's just get a divorce quickly. What are you talking about at a time like this? I couldn't believe she was joking about something like this. Especially not about divorce. Frustrated, I raised my voice slightly at her. But Lily wasn't joking, her face was deadly serious. Was she really serious? Divorce, why would you say that? Well, Dad, he's been friendly with some woman I don't know. She came to the park today. She told me, from now on, call me Mom. That means Dad's doing something bad, right? That's why God was watching, Lily said. I was chilled by her words. I couldn't believe such a reason existed. Lily looked me straight in the eyes and added, "And I also heard them talking about how Mom is in the way and how to get rid of her." If what Lily was saying was true, then my husband was having an affair. What Mrs. Johnson had said was true. And that perfume smell on his jacket. Realizing everything, I wanted to leave right away as Lily suggested, but I couldn't just leave my husband lying there.
Got it? So, let's leave quickly, okay?
Understood. We'll leave, just Lily and me. But first, I'll call an ambulance. The ambulance arrived in about 15 minutes. As they loaded my husband onto the stretcher and into the ambulance, the paramedics asked if I wanted to accompany him. I declined, saying I would go separately because of Lily. But honestly, I didn't even want to go to the hospital. I couldn't believe my husband was having an affair. I hadn't seen it myself, but Lily was so certain. It must be true. All the kindness he showed to me and Lily, was it just to avoid suspicion? The realization that I had been deceived filled me with anger. How could he? Feelings of deep resentment I'd never felt before towards my husband surged within me. Without a word, Lily and I left the house. We got into the car and drove aimlessly, with no particular destination in mind. Mom, about Dad. It's hard on Lily, but right now, I don't even want to think about someone like him. Pretending not to hear, I chose to ignore the topic. It's unbelievable what he did in front of such a young child. Especially his own. Remembering the happy times with my husband and daughter, tears naturally started to flow. I wish he hadn't been so kind. As these thoughts crossed my mind, about an hour into our drive, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, but I pulled over and answered the call casually. "Hello, who's this? Is this Mrs. John's wife? I'm the doctor who treated Mr. John after he was brought in." "Oh, yes, that's me." Honestly, I didn't care much about what had happened to my husband. As long as he was alive, that was enough for me. But then the doctor asked me to come to the hospital. "Could you please come to the hospital? There's something about your husband that we need to discuss." If he's alive, that's fine with me. I don't want anything to do with him anymore. "Well, there's a matter of potential criminal involvement in this case." "Criminal involvement? What does that mean?" Confused, I followed the doctor's request and drove to the hospital where my husband was taken. Upon arriving, I left Lily outside the consultation room and went in alone to meet the doctor. "I'm sorry for the trouble." "It's fine, so, what's going on?" "Well, we found poison in your husband's system." "Poison?" "Yes." "What does your husband do for a living?" "He's a pharmacist." "I see." The doctor sighed deeply. I didn't quite understand, but according to the doctor, pharmacists can handle poisons under certain circumstances. "Do you know what your husband ate recently? Or if anyone in the family experienced something similar?" "A few days ago, I ate a vegetable stir-fry and suddenly felt ill at night. My husband probably ate the same thing for lunch today. It's likely that then. The poison was probably in that dish." I shuddered at the doctor's words. If this was true, my husband had deliberately poisoned me with clear intent to harm. "It'll make you feel better because it has supplements in it," he had lied. After the conversation with the doctor, Lily and I went to my husband's hospital room. He had regained consciousness, apparently having been saved by stomach pumping. "Karen, sorry for collapsing suddenly." My husband apologized in a weak voice. But his words no longer had any effect on me. He was probably just frustrated that his attempt had failed. I simply said, "Too bad for you." "Huh?" Even in the face of everything, it seemed my husband was still intent on playing innocent. His face bore an expression of feigned ignorance. As if to say, I don't know anything. I couldn't stay in the same room with him and keep my composure. I left the house keys on his bedside table and left the hospital. Lily and I decided to return to my parents' home for the time being. Thinking about the possibility of something happening to Lily, I realized I just couldn't stay in that house anymore. About a week later, my husband called. He hadn't taken his cell phone to the hospital due to the emergency. I'm fine now, sorry to worry you. Are you at your parents' house? Yes. You can come back anytime. He sounded the same as ever, asking us to return. I couldn't tell what was real and what was an act anymore. I couldn't trust anything about him now. I decided it was time to confront him. All right. We'll come over now. Okay. I'll be waiting. After hanging up, I told Lily. Hey, this might be the last time we see Dad. Is that okay? Yeah. Dad did something bad. Lily seemed quite angry at her father too. Resolved, I took Lily and headed to the house where my husband was waiting.
Welcome back. I missed you.
My husband greeted us with a smile, but Lily and I were distinctly cold in response. Lily even went as far as to say, "Don't touch me." Hey, what's wrong? Why are you so mad? He joked as he headed towards the living room. We followed him. Sitting on the living room sofa, I went straight to the point and asked him bluntly. Are you having an affair? Huh? Me? That's a harsh joke, so, Lily, did you enjoy your time at Grandma's? He deflected, trying to change the subject. But Lily was direct. Dad, who was that woman you looked so happy talking to in the park? The one who told me to call her mom? Ah, that woman is. He was visibly shaken by Lily's question. Blinking rapidly and avoiding eye contact. That's just a friend. A friend of mine. Do you really think such a childish excuse will work? Since when does a friend ask someone's child to call her mom? Especially knowing you're married. That's, well. He was truly foolish. To think such an excuse would work. I had been taken for a fool. He looked down, silent for a while. I thought he might finally admit it. But then I realized he was using the opportunity to sneakily use his phone under the table.
What are you doing? Do you think you can make a fool of me?
Anger erupted inside me, and I raised my voice as I snatched his phone away.
Hey! What are you doing? Give it back.
My husband's phone displayed messages from a woman who appeared to be his mistress. In such a tense situation, I couldn't believe what he was doing. Despite my disbelief, I checked the messages and found something shocking. I tried to get rid of her today, but it didn't work. If I keep it up for a few more days, it'll surely work. She's frail and will definitely just take whatever I say and keep taking it. Really? Won't she eventually catch on? Your wife is such a fool, lol. I'm praying that you become my husband soon. The messages were filled with even more embarrassing content. It really was my husband's doing. So the mistress is named Ashley, huh? And you were trying to get rid of me, huh? No, that's not. What do you mean not? It's all here in the messages. It's your fault. Now that everything was out in the open. My husband, with nothing left to lose, glared at me with a rage I had never seen before. I'm tired of having to take care of Lily and do everything because of your frailty. So he had finally shown his true colors. It was all about him, not caring about anyone else. Was it really so hard for him to take care of Lily, our daughter? If that's how you felt, you should have just asked for a divorce.
I couldn't just say that.
Why not? You're just worried about how it looks to others, right? If I happened to disappear because of the poison you prepared, everyone would just pity you. But now it's backfired on you. What do you mean? You ate the lunch I brought, right? Yeah. That was the leftovers of what you made for me. Hearing this, my husband's face turned even redder.
Don't mess with me. You made me eat that, and I ended up unconscious.
The joke was on him. If he hadn't made that dish in the first place, none of this would have happened. No, you made it, remember? Anyway, it doesn't matter now. As you wished, I'll divorce you. Just sign the divorce papers. I said this as I handed him the divorce papers. I had picked them up from the office while I was at my parents' house.
Ha! I'm not getting a divorce.
At this point, what are you even talking about? We can't just continue like this. What about Lily? When my husband said this, Lily ran toward him. Then, suddenly, smack! Lily's powerful slap hit my husband's cheek.
I hate you, Dad. I never want to see you again.
Crying, Lily shouted at her father. Even my husband was visibly shaken, holding his slapped cheek in disbelief. Now you see, right? Lily doesn't consider you her father anymore. This is all your own doing. Realizing he had no ground left to stand on, my husband quietly signed the divorce papers. That's it, then. Go on, leave. No, there's still something left to do, I said, picking up my husband's phone to call Ashley, his mistress. Assuming it was my husband calling, she answered in a good mood. Hey, what's up? I'm John's wife. Ashley's voice turned ice cold in an instant. It's not surprising, given that she suddenly received a call from the wife of the man she's having an affair with.
It seems you've been involved in quite a scheme with my husband. You do realize that's a serious crime, right?
No, I wonder how many years you'll end up spending in prison. That'll be interesting to see. When I mentioned prison, Ashley began to panic.
Please, anything but that.
So, what's your plan?
If it's a settlement, I'll pay whatever amount you ask for. Just please, not the police.
She seemed desperate to avoid arrest, her voice quivering. But I wasn't going to let her off that easily. She needed to face the consequences of her actions.
Whether I'll settle for a payment will be decided later. For now, live with the fear of what might happen. Wait.
I cut off the call before Ashley could say more. My husband, who had heard the entire conversation, realized he might be next. His face turned pale, his usual confidence completely gone. You heard what they did, right? I could go to the police right now, but what will you do?
Just, please spare me that. For now, I'll have my lawyer contact you about the details. Of course, you'll be covering the legal fees. That's okay, right?
Okay. I understand. So, that day, I left my husband and returned to my parents' house. The next day, I immediately hired a lawyer and officially demanded alimony from both my husband and Ashley. I wasn't going to let this end easily. I also requested that a certified mail be sent to both my husband's and Ashley's workplaces, explaining their actions. A week passed, and by now, the lawyer's mail must have reached their offices. Honestly, I could have reported them to the police, but this way, they were socially obliterated. My ex-husband, having consumed the poison himself, was part of his own downfall. I refrained from reporting to avoid any suspicion on myself. I never imagined that man could be such a despicable person. I hope he lives his life full of regrets from now on. A month later, the full amount of the alimony I demanded was deposited into my account, completely severing my ties with my ex-husband. Still, I couldn't help but worry about Lily. Regardless of what he did, he was her only father. Do you ever want to see your dad? Not right now, but maybe someday. It's natural for her to feel that way. Despite everything, she was very attached to him and must be feeling lonely. I decided to respect her wishes if she ever wants to meet him again. As for my ex-husband, I found out through a message that he had to borrow money to pay the alimony. He also left his job because the affair became known at his workplace. And now he's juggling day and night shifts to pay off his debt. Ashley, it seems, didn't stay with him after the incident, and now reportedly works at a bar at the edge of town. Both of them are living the consequences of their actions, and I feel like I've gotten my revenge. Of course, I have no intention of forgiving them.
My focus now is solely on Lily and improving my health. I'm planning to start exercising to improve my health, even just a little bit, given my frail condition. Starting today, you're gonna take care of me. You're my daughter-in-law, so forget about having any freedom.
I won't do any caregiving.
Goodbye.
I guess my mother-in-law didn't expect me to refuse so bluntly. She was stunned.
How can you say such a thing? Taking care of me is your duty as a daughter-in-law. Then why don't you ask your beloved girlfriend to do it?
With that, I left my in-laws' house. My name is Emily, and I'm 28 years old. I just got divorced recently. My mother passed away when I was in 5th grade, so my father raised me. I come from a single-father household. That father also passed away in a car accident when I was in my junior year of high school. Having become an orphan, I lived in a facility until I graduated from high school. After graduating, I started working as an office clerk at a construction company and began living alone in an apartment. I had no romantic relationships like other young women. At 26, hearing about a friend from the facility who got married to someone she met on a dating app, I felt envious and quickly signed up for the app myself. On the app, I could start relationships easily, but as soon as men heard I'd spent almost a year in a facility, they all left. The only relationship that lasted was with a guy my age named Mike. Mike, being the eldest son, said that even after marriage we would live at his family's home.
Whenever I mention living at home after marriage, women run away. I get the same reaction from men when I say I lived in a facility.
We laughed like this, and that's how our relationship started. After dating for about a year, Mike proposed to me, and thinking I'd finally have a family, I happily agreed. I was a bit excited and hopeful about living in a suburban house with my in-laws.
Emily, I heard you used to help your dad with household chores when you were young. What a wonderful girl. I bet you're great at cooking too.
My mother-in-law said this gently when I visited to greet them before marriage. Raised in a single-father home and having tough memories from the facility, I thought about living with my in-laws, being filial to my mother-in-law, and sometimes seeking her comfort. It was a relief when she said she would receive my belongings at the in-laws' house after I moved out of my apartment 3 days after the wedding. At 9 a.m., the moving truck arrived, and my few belongings were quickly loaded into a small truck. After cleaning the apartment and checking the utilities, I finished the necessary paperwork at the office and headed to my in-laws' house with high spirits. It was a weekday, and I had taken a day off for the move. When I arrived, I noticed some of my boxes were already unpacked.
Thanks for starting to organize my things.
But then, unbelievable words came back. You're just after a property, aren't you?
The proof is that there's hardly anything of value in your stuff. You must have seduced Mike just to live in a house.
Typical of a poor girl. I was momentarily confused. Was this the same person I met before the wedding? Why had she changed so drastically? My head was filled with questions, but I began to understand what my mother-in-law was saying. Looking where she pointed, I saw my Coach bag hanging among her bags in the hallway. I couldn't afford luxury brands, but I had wanted at least one nice bag, so I bought it from a Coach outlet online using part of my bonus. It was essentially my only valuable possession, and my mother-in-law had taken it as if it were hers.
Please give it back. It's mine, and you can't just open my boxes and do whatever you want.
I couldn't help but raise my voice. Then came an unbelievable reply.
Don't be ridiculous as a daughter-in-law. What's yours is mine. More importantly, living in a house means cleaning inside and out, so I need to teach you.
Wondering what she would make me do, I followed her out the door. It was just a moment. My mother-in-law pushed me from behind, and I plunged face first into the drainage ditch in front of the entrance. As I began to pick myself up, I heard her mocking laughter.
Just got dirty, huh? It would have been funnier if you got hurt too.
Satisfied with my fall into the ditch, she closed and locked the front door. Covered in mud, I knew I had to find a way into the house. She clearly wasn't going to open the door for me. Knowing she would interfere by any means if she realized I wanted to get inside, I quietly entered the property and headed to the southern side where the garden was. Just then, my mother-in-law was putting away bedding, so I pressed myself against the western wall and waited. The dirty water was seeping into my clothes, making me cold, and I felt a sneeze coming on. But I couldn't give up now, so I desperately held it back. When it seemed like she had finished with the bedding, I moved to a window on the south side. As I thought, she had left the window unlocked, planning to lock it after putting away the bedding. I entered the house through there and hurried to the bathroom. I quickly stripped off my muddy clothes, rummaged through a cardboard box for a bath towel and bathrobe, and started showering. But a few minutes into my shower, my mother-in-law began pounding on the bathroom door.
You pay before you use a bath. Don't use someone else's bathroom without permission.
At that moment, I clearly realized. It was because of her that Mike couldn't get married. When my husband returned home, I told him about the truck incident, the drainage ditch incident, the Coach bag incident, and how it seemed my high-end skincare products had been used by my mother-in-law. And that's why I had such a terrible time, I said.
Terrible? Don't ever speak ill of my mother again. This house was inherited by her, an only child, from her parents. My dad died when I was in 2nd grade, but we managed to get by till today because of this house. Living here for free is all thanks to her.
So, Mike is just a mama's boy.
You don't have anywhere else to go, do you? It's brazen of you to stay in this house without paying rent. Instead, you'd better dedicate yourself to us as payment.
That was my mother-in-law's favorite thing to say. Mike never contributes to the household expenses. I buy necessities and groceries out of my own income. It seems neither my mother-in-law nor Mike is satisfied with anything I do.
Your meals are so repetitive. It's like you're serving leftovers every day.
I thought I had been doing well, alternating fish and meat dishes. But it seems they dislike everything I do.
What about contributing to the household expenses? Household expenses? Bringing a poor woman like you here was meant for you to work hard in both your job and house chores, like a horse. Don't you get it yet? Do you know where Mike is right now?
About 2 months after our marriage, she suddenly asked me this.
Maybe at work or on the train home, right? He's at his favorite girlfriend's house. What? Really? There's a girl he really likes, Natalie, you know. But when she came to greet us and didn't like something here, she refused to live with me. I told Mike he couldn't marry a woman who wouldn't live with me and in this house, so they broke up. Why is he still seeing a woman he broke up with? You're such a dimwit. They just decided not to get married but are still in a good relationship. I didn't like it, so I decided to take out my frustration on whoever Mike brought home as his wife, thinking it would be Natalie. And then you showed up.
It's pathetic to realize I'm being harassed every day just because of that. Then the incident happened. As I was about to enter the bathroom, a bath towel was on the floor, and I slipped. The fall hurt all over. Mike was home, so I shouted for help, but there was no response. I had no choice but to crawl out of the bathroom, hastily wrap myself in whatever I had just taken off in the changing room, and crawl to my bag. In my bag were my card case, wallet, and phone. I figured with these, I could manage somehow. Since both my husband and mother-in-law were ignoring me, I reluctantly called an ambulance using my phone, crawled to the entrance to wait for the paramedics, and was taken to the hospital. I was diagnosed with a fractured foot, and since I hit my head on the wall when I fell, I needed to have brain scans and ended up being hospitalized. I messaged Mike about being hospitalized. He read the message but didn't reply to ask which hospital, which means he probably doesn't care about me. He's likely gone off to be with that Natalie woman, thinking it's convenient for him. Other patients had their families bring them pajamas and change of clothes, and their used items were taken home for laundry. With no family visiting, I had no choice but to wear the hospital's rental clothes. The rentals had the hospital's name embroidered prominently on the left chest pocket, which was quite noticeable. Walking awkwardly with crutches to the toilet, I endured the stares of people comparing the embroidery on my right chest with my face. During visiting hours, patients' rooms became noisy with families and friends crowding in, and some patients even got cautioned by nurses for the disturbance. On my 6th day of hospitalization, the female doctor who examined me on the night I was admitted explained the results of my tests and the prospects of my discharge. "Could you possibly postpone my discharge date as much as possible?" I pleaded with her. To my surprise, she smiled gently and said, "It seems like you have some serious reasons." The doctor asked me to wait outside the consultation room, and after a few minutes, she appeared with a wheelchair, urging me to sit. She then pushed me to the hospital's rooftop.
"I've been concerned about the circumstances leading to your injury ever since the night you were brought in."
Hearing this, tears came before words, and I couldn't stop crying. Just the thought that someone cared about me filled me with overwhelming happiness. The doctor spoke kindly to me as I struggled to speak through tears. She patiently waited for me to calm down and listened to my story seriously. She also shared some similar cases she knew of, which was quite striking. "It seems safer for you not to return there ever again," she said gently.
"That's why I wanted to postpone my discharge."
"But even if we delay your discharge, going back to such a place full of anxiety is pointless," she reasoned.
"Earlier, you mentioned a patient who gathered evidence of domestic violence from her husband and won compensation. How can I gather such evidence? I plan to leave that house eventually, but I want to make sure I get my revenge properly."
Understanding my firm resolve, the doctor repeated the importance of never returning to my in-laws' house for my safety, but then she provided me with various useful information. She mentioned that there's a wide variety of hidden cameras available, resembling Starbucks cups, pens, or even glasses. Since I always wear glasses at home after taking off my contacts, the glasses type seemed particularly useful. I deserve to be treated as an important individual. And I can't settle my feelings without proper retribution. 2 weeks later, with the doctor's concerned words, "Please come to the hospital if anything happens, and don't overdo it," I was discharged. Armed with various voice recorders and hidden cameras I had ordered online, delivered to the doctor's home. I had spent nearly my card's limit on this equipment, but to someone who had resolved to face death once, this seemed trivial. The doctor had also prepared 2 crutches for me. I had done a lot of walking training in the hospital's rehabilitation room, so they weren't absolutely necessary. But she had rented them for my safety.
That kind of family, knowing you have a fracture, might try to knock you down or push you to fall. But psychologically, it's hard for someone to aggressively attack another person who is using crutches. Think of these crutches as a weapon to stop their attacks, and if you ever feel in grave danger, use them to strike back.
I was grateful for the crutches, but more so, I was touched that someone cared enough to think about my safety in such detail. Upon my early discharge, my mother-in-law reacted just as I had anticipated. However, I wasn't saddened by anything she said. In fact, I was wearing hidden camera glasses and had voice recorders in my bag and coat pockets, successfully gathering evidence. The worse she spoke, the more I inwardly smirked, thinking, "You're just making things worse for yourself."
"You've been gone from this house for 2 months, and yet you have the nerve to come back? I thought you'd run away somewhere because you found it hard to return." "Well, you say that, but weren't you the one who laid the bath towel in the bathroom, causing me to fall? It wasn't my choice to leave. Your actions caused my fracture and hospitalization. How dare you address me, your mother-in-law, so informally? I've let you live in this house for free, and yet you're so ungrateful. So, you admit to laying the towel down to harm me, even to the point of death?" "Of course. As the head of this house, I can do whatever I want."
I found it somewhat amusing to hear such terrible things. Each cruel action by my mother-in-law was turning into advantageous evidence for me. The next morning was even more dramatic. There's a 30-minute gap between my husband leaving for work and my departure. My mother-in-law always plotted something during this time. As I headed to the entrance, she stealthily approached from behind and kicked my right crutch. Although I couldn't capture the moment on my glasses camera, I exaggeratedly fell and struck her head hard with my left crutch. She too fell face first to the floor. With voice recorders in my bag and computer shoulder bag turned on, I spoke loudly before she could yell.
"How could you do that?" Kicking away one of the crutches of someone who can't walk without them? I can't stand having a stranger like you in this house. You should have been gone to the other world by now, not walking around with these crutches.
This was exactly what I wanted. I no longer felt bothered by her cruel words. Rather, I was pleased, as each word added to the evidence in my favor. And it seemed she hadn't realized that I had intentionally struck her with my crutch. Her harassment and sarcasm continued, but it was all playing into my hands, as evidence piled up like a snowball. Since the incident with the crutch, I noticed her reactions had become slower.
Where's the curry powder I kept on this shelf?
It's just a misunderstanding. It's always in this cupboard.
Oh, as long as it's there.
I had moved the curry powder that was always on the shelf to the cabinet with folding doors, and it seemed like my mother-in-law realized it was her misunderstanding. It appeared that the hit from my crutch had indeed had an effect.
You're such a terrible wife. That's probably why Mike's coming home late tonight again. Mike is probably at Natalie's place. Natalie, who didn't want to live with you, is likely telling Mike all the reasons she dislikes you right now.
My mother-in-law, shaking with anger, threw a radish at me. I quickly dodged it, causing the radish to crash into the window and break the glass. Knowing everything was being recorded, I made sure to speak clearly for the voice recorders.
That's terrible. Were you trying to hit me in the head with that radish?
When Mike returned home, he was furious. It looks like you broke this window. Trying to make my mother sick in this cold?
It was your mom who threw the radish. You must have provoked her to do it. You're just lazing around with a little fracture, skipping work, slacking off at home chores, living a lazy life, and now this disgraceful act?
One day, my mother-in-law was in a traffic accident and got hospitalized. According to the police and the driver who hit her, she suddenly stepped onto a non-crosswalk road and couldn't be avoided. Her belief that pedestrians should always be avoided by cars had led to this accident. She should have been used to dodging cars with that mindset. But I think my crutch hit had slowed her reactions, preventing her from avoiding the car. With my mother-in-law hospitalized, I finally had some peaceful time at home. On weekends when Mike visited Natalie, I enjoyed my time alone, watching movies I had rented. Meanwhile, Mike seemed busy arranging for my mother-in-law's care after her accident left her partially paralyzed. It's only natural. He had to deal with getting a care bed, selecting a care manager, and meeting with helpers. He tried to push these responsibilities onto me, but I refused to take on any, leaving it all to him. During this time, I quietly proceeded with my plan. I leased an apartment an hour's drive away and moved my belongings there little by taxi while Mike was at work. The day Mike brought my mother-in-law home from the hospital, he said, "Now you can't escape. You'll start taking care of my mother from today. Starting today, you're gonna take care of me.
You're my daughter-in-law, so you owe me that much."
At that moment, I pressed a button.
I can't stand having a stranger like you in this house. You should have been gone to the other world by now, not walking around with these crutches.
My mother-in-law's insults played at maximum volume from the voice recorder throughout the house. One after another, her recorded abuses echoed.
Care for you? No way. I won't care for a stranger. Grab that strange device from her hand. Turn it off quickly. I have plenty more where that came from. I have 3 more copies. I'll submit this along with the footage from the hidden camera. I'm filing a civil lawsuit. My lawyer has everything prepared.
Then, I showed the nearly completed divorce papers.
You're joking, right? Where will you go, being all alone? Lawyers, divorce. Stop talking nonsense and change my diaper. How would you feel in my place? Would you want to take care of someone who hurled those words at you? Your actions merit police involvement for assault and insult. If you don't agree to the divorce, I'll contact my lawyer and have the police here in no time.
Intimidated by the mention of police, Mike obediently filled out the divorce papers and handed them to me.
You and your detestable family, who are nothing but strangers to me, I'm finally free from you all.
To this, Mike, belatedly filled with regret, pleaded with me.
It's a misunderstanding. I underestimated you. I thought you were a woman who would endure anything in this house. Please come back after cooling off a bit. Right. Marrying you was proof that Mike saw you as the only real woman for him. Stretch your wings a bit and then come back. Let's live together, the three of us.
With you strangers? You must be joking. If you had treated me like a normal person, I might have happily taken on the caregiving. If only you had welcomed me warmly into the family when I first married and came here. I'm leaving a voice recorder here. Listen to it daily to remind yourselves of what you've done. And with that, I left my in-laws' house behind. According to my lawyer, my bedridden mother-in-law and husband were subjected to police investigation and were charged with assault, injury, and insult. This proved that what they did to me was an act unforgivable as a human being. I received a substantial amount as compensation and for emotional distress. The money that came to me meant that Mike and his mother had to struggle, mortgaging their house and taking on debt. I heard from my lawyer that they were having a hard time. Furthermore, Mike, having been involved with the police, was forced to resign from his job. Each time my lawyer visited Mike and his mother, he noticed Mike becoming more haggard. The doctor who advised me provided various suggestions. While continuing my job at the construction company, I decided to learn something new for a side job. After my experience, I deeply understood how having a sum of money can save one's life. The doctor told me that programming could be a lifesaver, and with the money I received from my ex-husband and his mother, I started learning programming and took my first step forward. As my online programming lessons took off and I began dating a man I met through programming, I was in high spirits. That's when I was shocked to hear the news: bodies found in a suspected murder-suicide in a house. The names of the deceased mother and son in the news ticker were those of my former mother-in-law and husband. The news suggested it was a desperate murder-suicide due to the hardships of caregiving, but I doubted that the end of those two could be so beautiful. Regardless, those who tried to end my life were gone, and I was living actively, moving towards my next step. This was, in its own way, my victory. Your company, it seems like it's going to withdraw. My salary has been decreasing rapidly for the past 3 months, so it looks really risky now. Oh, I wanted to talk to you about that. I thought I should have consulted with you a little earlier, but haven't you been acting weird towards me lately? So, it was difficult for me to bring it up. Yeah, your company is going under, and all you can say is for me to work. Huh? The company is going under? Well, it might come to that. But what I want to discuss isn't about that. What? Are you finally kicking this one out? Oh, you remember, right? I told you before that company seems to be going under. It seems like it's actually true. Even though I put up with her low facial attractiveness because her parent is the CEO. Sure, it's cool that she's raised overseas and good at her job, but raising the bar with that, and with this face? At least if she were beautiful, there would be some saving grace. What are both of you talking about? I married you expecting money. And now, the company is going under? Probably the offshore side isn't doing well either, right? Get out, you ugly who doesn't earn a single cent. I'm embarrassed to introduce you to my college friends, so please stop being mom. When they learned that the company I work for is going under, my husband and his stepchild suddenly changed their attitudes, as if they had turned their backs on me. The hurtful words they threw at me were slowly breaking my heart. I had a lot I wanted to say, but given everything that had happened so far, I no longer had the energy for it. I understand. You want me to divorce and leave this house, right? That's right. You're smart, so you caught on quickly. Well, even if you regret it, I don't care. If my husband wanted a divorce, then I would grant his wish. By simply agreeing to the divorce, my husband would surely regret it deeply. My name is Emily. My parents live overseas, but I have been living in Nebraska for about 5 years now due to work-related reasons. My father is the CEO of a company that develops software, imports and sells software, and I work at the branch of his company. I would be imagined as a beautiful girl who was highly praised. However, that wasn't the case in reality. I have a plain appearance, and I'm not good at interacting with people outside of work, so I think people around me found me difficult to approach. Even during my student days, I spent my time alone in the corner of the classroom, and as soon as class was over, I would leave school faster than anyone else. As someone like me, it was impossible to suddenly change my personality in an unfamiliar place, so I continued to be the introverted person. Being a loner is nothing new for me. That's why I didn't try to forcibly expand my personal connections outside of work. Rather, I had given up because I thought I couldn't do it. It seemed like the gods took pity on me, as after living in Nebraska for 5 years, at the age of 37, I was blessed with a good encounter.
Well, Emily, you work at a software development company, huh? That's impressive. I also work for an IT-related company. But I've never heard of the name of your company. Sorry for my ignorance. Oh, don't worry about it. Our company deals mainly with servers and networks, so not many people would know about it in the first place. Besides, I'm not actually involved in development. My main responsibilities are in procurement and sales. So, I'm far from being impressed.
The Dart bar I frequented often had a lot of customers from overseas who had come to work in the US. Because of that, the atmosphere in the bar was friendly, and even strangers would strike up conversations easily. Although I was usually a loner, there were times when I wanted to interact with people. It was at this dart bar that I met the man who would become my husband.
Emily, you don't play darts? I just came here to have a drink. I don't play darts. Are you having soft drink, Sam? Yeah. I'm just here because my senior colleagues at work drag me along. I don't drink alcohol, and I don't play darts. It must be challenging dealing with office politics, huh?
Sam checked his phone for the time and placed the drink he was holding on the counter.
Huh? Are you leaving already? It's only 7 o'clock. My daughter's coming back from sport club soon. Since I don't have a wife at home, I need to prepare dinner. So, even if my coworkers invite me out, they usually let me go around this time. It's a convenient way to avoid any complaints.
I couldn't help but laugh at Sam's joking words. He noticed my reaction and returned a light smile before heading over to make an excuse to his senior colleagues. From that day on, I began looking for Sam whenever I went to the dart bar, and he would always approach me with a greeting when he spotted me.
So, Emily, you work for your father's company, right? That's impressive. Oh, not really. We have branches overseas, so people tend to think it's a big company. But in reality, it's not that large. It's more like a medium-sized enterprise.
Even though it was a dart bar, Sam and I never played darts. We would always enjoy conversations with drinks in hand at the corner of the counter. Every time we met, the distance between my husband and me grew closer, and we started meeting in places other than the dart bar. It was a natural progression for us to start dating. I was excited as I approached my 40s, which finally brought a joy into my life. But I couldn't just revel in happiness forever. To continue my relationship with my husband, I needed to build a relationship with his child, Nancy. At that time, Nancy was 15 years old. A middle school student, and facing the challenges of exam preparation. I couldn't help but worry. However, I quickly realized that my worries were unnecessary.
Emily, you lived overseas until 5 years ago, right? You have all these cool qualities. Why are you even dating someone like Dad? Don't pretend to compliment Emily and then bash me, alright? That's right. It's not nice to say negative things about you. Besides, I'm not that cool myself.
I started having dinner with my husband and daughter at our house. We enjoyed our meals, making jokes and having fun as a family of 3. It looked like an ordinary family dinner from any perspective. And I couldn't be happier about that simplicity. My relationship with my daughter was also excellent. 2 years after we started dating, my husband and I got married. Up until this point, everything had been going smoothly, but things started getting busy. especially when it came to introducing our parents to each other. Taking my husband and his parents to the place where my parents live, I faced the challenge of their lack of understanding of foreign cultures.
Is this a document from your company, Emily? It's all in French, and I can't understand anything.
Well, this part explains our main products.
What about engagement gifts? It's not a common here, so it's not necessary.
My mother and I were kept busy, managing them. However, our busyness indicated that my husband and his parents were making an effort to understand my background and my parents' culture. Despite the chaos, I felt a pleasant sense of exhaustion. After a successful wedding, I began living with my husband and daughter as a family of 3 in his house. I thought we were starting a happy life together. However, things gradually started to take an uncertain turn. A year after our marriage, when Nancy entered high school, my husband made a proposal.
I realized it when Nancy was preparing for high school exams. I've been burdening her too much with my late hours at work. Considering how much tougher university exams will be, it might be better if one of us has more time at home. That might be true, but
we had conversations like this from time to time whenever we were alone in the living room. We had always postponed making decisions on difficult matters. However, this time, my husband seemed more determined. And I found myself pondering whether we could delay the decision until the following year when Nancy would start preparing for university entrance exams. The current situation seemed to suggest that my husband wanted me to quit my job or was considering changing jobs to spend more time at home. But our situation was more complicated, leaving me in a dilemma.
So, Sam's idea is for me to continue working as I am, and for you to find a job with shorter working hours, right? Well, considering our circumstances, that would make sense. You earn more than I do, and you work at your father's company. It wouldn't be feasible for you to change jobs. It does make sense when you look at it that way, but are you okay with it, Sam? You've been at your current company for over 20 years, right?
For Nancy's sake, it's worth it. I couldn't meet my husband's eyes, which were filled with determination, and I averted my gaze. I felt sorry for asking my husband to quit the job he had been working at until now. However, it seemed that my husband was determined. I realized that I hadn't noticed his determination and had been trying to postpone giving an answer.
Okay, then. Should we go with that?
I gave in to my husband's determination and accepted his proposal on the spot. Did you both bring your lunches?
We did.
You wouldn't forget something like that.
Oh, sorry. I actually forgot.
Our daughter, who seemed like she might be late, rushed out of the house, and I hurried back to the kitchen to grab the bento lunch my husband had prepared. My husband quit his job and started working part-time shifts. With him taking care of the household and looking after our daughter, I could focus on my work. Additionally, with my husband being at home more often, we could support our daughter effectively, and she passed her university entrance exams smoothly. I felt guilty for asking my husband to quit his job, but it might have been the right choice for our family. I packed the lunches my husband had made on the kitchen table. Now, after 3 years, I couldn't help but think about how things had changed over the past 3 years.
Hey. Huh? What's for dinner? It's probably on the table, the bread.
Again? Well, I can't help it.
Even as a homemaker, I'm quite busy with various things. Besides, it looks like my salary has decreased significantly this month. Your company is okay, right? Huh? My company? Yes, it's fine, don't worry. In the past 2 years, your salary has been steadily decreasing, and it looks like it dropped significantly in the past 2 months. I quit my job, and now you need to work hard and earn for us. We have to think about Nancy's tuition fees too. So, that bread is for saving in case of emergencies. Just endure it and eat it. All right.
I couldn't respond to my husband's words and grab the bread while glancing at the dishes for both of us. In the first year of our marriage, my husband was kind, but from the second year onward, his attitude gradually changed. Now, in the third year, We had a piece of bread for dinner, and instead of a lunchbox, I received coins. But it wasn't just my husband whose attitude had changed.
I came home early today, so could you not take a shower before me? The bathtub will smell like an old lady.
Huh? Oh, sorry. But do I really smell that bad?
Don't talk back. Just say I understand quietly.
I had thought about taking a shower early since I happened to come home early, but when I got out of the bathroom, my daughter came into the dressing room, and I was scolded abruptly. My daughter kicked me out, threw my clothes into the hallway, and I heard the door to the bathroom close with a bang. I was abruptly pushed out and hadn't finished drying my body completely, so I quietly returned to the dressing room. It seemed like my daughter was still in the bathroom, and I could hear the sound of water running to clean the room. I had been kicked out suddenly, and I hadn't finished drying myself yet, so I quickly dried myself, threw the bath towel into the laundry basket, and got dressed in the hallway. I had become a target for my daughter's harsh treatment. Well, to my 20-year-old daughter, I might be considered an old lady. A few years ago, she used to compliment me, but now it felt like ancient history. In a situation like this, it would be normal to get angry with my husband and daughter. However, since they were family, I also wanted to avoid making our relationship worse by getting angry. But the real reason was probably that I was fundamentally introverted. In our current situation, it was clear that my husband and daughter had become allies, and it was a 2-on-1 situation. I, as an introvert, couldn't possibly win against them. I was afraid of conflicts and isolation, so I was avoiding the problem.
How's married life? It's fine. Sam takes care of the housework, and Nancy is going to college properly.
I reported with a smile to my parents, making up a false report. I had video calls with my parents every few months, and conversations with them used to be one of my pleasures. However, now I couldn't confide in them about my worries regarding my husband and daughter, and it had become a painful time of telling lies. If I were to confide in my parents, all the pent-up frustration and sadness I've been holding back would surely overflow and become unstoppable. Furthermore, my parents are on the other side of the ocean, so I can't easily rely on them, and I don't want to burden them with worries from such a distant place. That's why I forcibly swallow the troubles that have been building up inside me. I should just yell at my husband and daughter. I should confide in my parents, even if they're across the sea. Some may feel frustrated, but that's the nature of being an introvert. However, I'm aware that not taking action and not properly explaining the reasons for the decreasing income are only fueling the fire. But being an introvert isn't all bad. Sometimes, by not taking action myself, problems can resolve themselves. In this case, it resulted in my husband making a self-destructive move. One day, when I returned home from work, as usual, just a bread was placed on the kitchen table. I picked up the one and let out a sigh, and at the same time, my husband spoke to me from behind.
I think I'm the one who wants to sigh.
Huh? I had let my guard down, and suddenly being addressed from behind, I flinched for a moment.
Oh, you startled me. I heard from a former colleague at your old company that your company might be withdrawing. Your income has been decreasing steadily over the past 3 months, so it seems really precarious.
Oh, that's what this is about.
I did want to talk to you about that, and I know I should have talked to you a little earlier, but you know, Sam and Nancy have been like that towards me lately, so it's been hard to bring it up.
Talk?
You're just going to tell me to work because your company is going under, right?
Huh?
Is the company really going under? Well, it might come to that. But what I wanted to discuss isn't that.
What?
Are you finally kicking this woman out?
When I tried to explain the reason for my previously difficult to discuss income at the company to my husband, my daughter, who had heard our voices, came into the kitchen. She stood next to my husband as a matter of course, and it seemed like she was fully intent on blaming me with the two of them.
Oh, I told you about it before, didn't I? It seems like her company might go under. It looks like it might be true.
Seriously?
So, there's no point in you being in this house anymore. Right? I quit my job for you.
Seriously? Papa is too pitiful. I could only listen to their conversation and couldn't find a way to interject, not knowing when to interrupt the conversation between the two of them. Even I felt embarrassed that my introverted tendencies were kicking in at a time like this. However, my silence only fueled their conversation with unbelievably hurtful words.
Because our parents are executives, I tolerated your below-average looks and married you.
This is just too much. Exactly.
Being a woman who's super successful is cool and all, but raising expectations and then looking like this? At least if you were beautiful, there might be some redemption. What are both of you saying?
I managed to interject with a feeble voice. But the words I mustered seemed to fuel their conversation even more.
I married you expecting money.
Yet, your company is going under.
I bet things aren't going well on the overseas side either, right? A useless, ugly wife who doesn't earn a dime is worthless. Get out. Even my university friends imagine a super beautiful mom. I'm embarrassed to introduce you, so stop being my mom.
Both of them directed heartless words at me, breaking my heart. There were so many things I wanted to say, but I no longer had the energy to do so.
Fine. You want me to divorce and leave this house, right?
That's right.
You're quick to understand because you're smart. Daddy quit his job and even became a homemaker so that you could continue working, but you weren't doing your part and were going to rely on him from now on because you wouldn't have a job, right?
It really sucks.
It can't be helped that Daddy will abandon you.
My daughter genuinely seems to hate me, glaring at me with a demonic expression. Meanwhile, my husband is grinning beside her. As I look at my husband's expression, a surge of anger wells up within me. When was the last time I felt this level of anger?
You won't even know how much you'll regret this.
In my entire life, I can't remember a time when I raised my voice so loudly. I placed the bread I had been holding firmly onto the kitchen table and walked away from the two of them to pack my things. My ex-husband wanted a divorce, so I granted his wish. If I just quietly divorced my husband, he would regret it deeply. Since our marriage was an international one, the procedure became somewhat complicated, but as long as we followed law here, there were no major issues. When I divorced my ex-husband, we divided the savings accumulated during our 5 years of marriage. And each received $7 million. I didn't want to give my ex-husband any money if I could help it, but it was a rule, so there was no helping it. Besides, I thought that most of this money would be used for my daughter's remaining 2 years of tuition, so I didn't resist too strongly. However, by giving money to my ex-husband, I would come to realize that he was even worse than I had imagined. 3 months after the divorce, when the company I was working for went under, I returned to my home overseas. Although I had spent more time overseas, I had been living in the US for a while, so I still felt a strange sensation. I even thought about visiting the US again someday, but one day, I received a video call from my daughter.
Mom, help!
What's wrong? My daughter's video on the computer is pixelated, but her anxious expression is clear. While I could imagine that the cause might be my ex-husband, the actual situation far exceeded my expectations.
I was deceived by Dad. I'm so sorry for all the terrible things I said to you, Mom. I'm sorry.
My daughter keeps apologizing, but I still don't fully understand what my ex-husband did to her. I decided to calm my daughter down and first find out what has been happening in these past 3 months.
The tuition payment is due soon, right? Dad told me I have to pay for it myself. He said if I do, I should definitely make sure to pay it back once I start working.
Why?
I gave you money for your tuition when we got divorced, didn't I? He says this is 23 years worth of living expenses for him. And since he raised me up until now, he wants me to take care of him once I graduate from college. He wants you to replace me. That's impossible for a first-year working adult like her.
He said he took you in just for that reason. If you don't fulfill your role, you're just like Mom. As I listened to my daughter's story, I unconsciously started trembling with anger. I realized I was trembling, and it dawned on me that I was becoming increasingly agitated. Mom, I'm so sorry. I never thought Dad would be like this. So, he said a lot of bad things about you, and I started to dislike you because of it. Dad always said terrible things about you, like calling you ugly, so I went along with it and got carried away. But when I think about it carefully, Mom, you weren't such a bad person.
I'm not angry, so calm down. It seems like there's some confusion in your words again. How did Sam ask you about me?
He actually didn't want to quit his job, but Mom forced Dad to quit, and after the company went bankrupt, Mom told Dad he had to work now. So, that's what Dad told me. I muted the call, let out a deep sigh, and then immediately unmuted it. I had a vague sense of it before, as all of my ex-husband's expressions and my daughter's words had aligned with my ex-husband's narrative. However, after hearing my daughter's story, I became certain that my ex-husband had poisoned my daughter's mind to make me look like a bad woman and push her to take care of him. Furthermore, I started to understand my ex-husband's ridiculous plan from there. Originally, he intended for my daughter to take care of him, but when I, the daughter of a company president, came into the picture and we got married, he changed his plan. However, when he found out that my company was going under, he returned to his original plan of having my daughter take care of him. My daughter is also at fault for believing him. Even if she was deceived, the fact remains that she said hurtful things to me. However, my ex-husband started giving my daughter a bad impression of me around the time she was in her 3rd year of high school. At that age, she's still just a child. Moreover, growing up in a single-father environment, it's not surprising that my daughter believed my ex-husband's words. I believe it's entirely understandable. I know my daughter as the kind and cheerful girl she was before she was subjected to this manipulation of her impressions. Therefore, she can also be considered a victim of my ex-husband, just like me. I felt anger rising again towards my ex-husband, who had deceived my daughter and caused her so much sadness and pain. My misunderstandings have been cleared up, so I'll just leave it at that. It seems like he's genuinely reflecting on his actions, so I'll forgive him.
Don't worry. I'll help you.
I ended the video call, relieved that my kind daughter had returned. Also, I realized my trembling had stopped. However, that doesn't mean my anger towards my ex-husband has disappeared. His misunderstandings will be corrected from now on. I'm looking forward to the day when he realizes the depth of his regret. I decided to look forward to that time. 3 months later, my daughter asked for help. Now, it was my ex-husband who contacted me.
What's going on?
What? I understood the meaning of my ex-husband's words, but I wanted to see him flustered as much as possible. So, I pretended not to know. My ex-husband seemed quite agitated and leaned forward towards the camera, his face clearly visible on my computer screen. His face alone was already making the screen noisy, and he started arguing more.
Nancy suddenly left the house. How can she have so much money? I heard from her that you've been paying her tuition and rent. Your company went bankrupt, and you ran back home. Where are you getting that kind of money? Are you getting it from your father?
Don't be so rude. I'm not like someone who freeloads off their family. I'm sending the money I earn from my work to Nancy, so she has no right to complain.
Why do you have the luxury then? Your company went bankrupt, and you must be struggling just like me.
Your misunderstanding about the company going bankrupt or my dad's company not doing well in the first place is the root of the problem.
Huh? What do you mean? The company here disappeared, didn't it?
The company didn't go under because of poor management, it simply made the decision to move to another country, considering the economic situation and prospects there.
That means
they simply gave up on doing business in the US. The company was gradually winding down, right? We have an incentive-based system, so if there's less work, of course, the salary decreases too. Other employees had various guarantees, but I didn't need them because I had the next big job lined up, and my base salary was enough. Besides, it was originally my dad's company, so I didn't care much about the guarantees. That's why my salary gradually decreased.
Why didn't you tell me that? To explain that, I need to tell you about my current job. I mentioned earlier that I had the next big job lined up, right? It's becoming the CEO of my dad's company. CEO, you mean the president?
My ex-husband seemed too surprised by my words. He slammed the table, stood up abruptly, and his face disappeared from the camera. My computer screen now showed his stomach area. After a few seconds, he seemed to have lost all his strength, sat down slumped, and his unwanted face returned to the screen. I decided to provoke him further, thinking he would be frustrated at this point.
It's not exactly the same, but yeah, it's like being a president. However, I'm currently a candidate for CEO and working my way up. I think I'll become CEO eventually, but my annual income at that time will be around some billion. Annual income? Billion a year? Are you kidding me? Even 2 million annual income is incredibly wealthy.
Yes, there are only a few people who earn an annual income of 13 billion.
What's going on? Wasn't here supposed to be at the forefront of the world?
Upon hearing that my annual income would be 13 billion, my ex-husband seemed to regain his strength and lifted his head. Now his throat and chin were visible on my screen. As my ex-husband pointed out, earning 2 billion a year would already make you wealthy. However, to be considered ultra-wealthy, you should have assets of billion or more, and that accounts for only a few of all households. To have 5 billion in assets, only a few people make it. Therefore, my annual income of 13 billion was an astronomical figure for Sam. However, if you scale it towards the global standard, it's not as extraordinary as it seems. Compared to the salaries of CEOs in major companies, my income was just a fraction of the median figure, which was maybe more. When you put it that way, it might not be such a big deal on a global scale.
Annual income of 13 billion. Why didn't you tell me something so important? Because, for me to become a CEO at my dad's company, I have to move here. It's not easy to discuss bringing you and Nancy to here, right? But you misunderstood, thinking that my company went bankrupt, and you treated me poorly. Do you think I can have this conversation with you, especially after being told that you were counting on my money?
Forget it.
Oh no! Did I give up on an annual income of 13 billion?
My husband tried hard to lift his head but ended up looking at the ceiling. Now his head and jaw were visible on my screen. Beyond being frustrated, I decided to add some sarcasm.
Never mind about me, are you okay? Well, I've heard from Nancy. She said your job search hasn't been going well. A 5-year gap in the rapidly advancing IT industry is fatal. Even though you have long working hours, your salary is barely better than a new graduate's. You won't be able to save for your retirement this way, and your mental and physical health won't hold up. So, even if you know it's a black company, you have no choice but to work there, right? Yeah. Every day, I come home late, and my salary is just a bit better than a fresh graduate's. I can't save for my retirement like this, and I can't keep up mentally or physically. Hey, you have an annual income of 13 billion, right? Can you help me, like you did with Nancy?
Why should I help you?
Besides, I don't have an annual income of 13 billion yet. But as a CEO candidate, you must be earning a lot, right? So, you can pay for Nancy's tuition and rent, can't you?
Well, that's true, but I have no intention of helping you. You can continue having bread.
Why would you? When Nancy came to our place to pick up her things, she saw that the trash can was filled with containers. He's working for a bad company and comes home exhausted, so he can't cook anymore. It's a shame. If he had a family, he might have had someone to cook for him. Hey, don't leave me alone. At least try to convince Nancy not to abandon me. It's time for me to get back to work, so I'm going to end this now. Wait. It's already night. Don't hang up on me with a lie like that.
I ended the call in silence. It must be around 11 p.m. in the US, but it's already past 1 p.m. where I am. My ex-husband must be quite anxious not to consider the time difference. Satisfied with seeing my ex-husband frustrated and agitated, I stretched and decided to get back to work. After our call, my ex-husband continued to work for the company. However, his 46-year-old body and a 5-year career gap quickly took a toll on him. He eventually quit his job and started looking for a new one. But due to his age, career gap, and the fact that he left his previous company in less than a year, his job search became even tougher. In the end, realizing he couldn't find a company in the IT industry that met his criteria, my ex-husband settled for a job at a supermarket, drawing on his experience working part-time. However, this job wasn't any easier. Learning new things at the age of 46 is challenging, and he's been called a useless old man by the student employees. Moreover, the supermarket job requires early mornings and physical exertion. My ex-husband's mental and physical health is already in shambles. But if he quits this job too, his next job search will likely be even more challenging. So, my ex-husband continues to struggle through life alone, eating fast food at home. While my ex-husband could have been supported by family, I am divorced from him, and my daughter left home due to my financial support. Naturally, my daughter has no intention of maintaining ties with my ex-husband, so he'll remain alone unless he finds a new partner. However, given his current situation, it's hard to believe that there will be another chance for him. So, I hope he can continue to live on his own and make an effort. My daughter and I occasionally keep in touch via video calls. She says she wants to work in a job related to software and apps after graduating from college, and she seems to be working hard on her studies right now. As for me, I'm working hard in preparation for becoming the CEO of my father's company. There are some differences in the system compared to previous companies, and I'm facing various challenges. It's a tough situation, but I try to maintain my motivation by planning to visit the US about once a year to see my daughter. My main purpose for visiting the US is to see my daughter. When I go to visit my daughter, I plan to stay in my daughter's room. Next month will be my first overnight stay in my daughter's room. Today, I'll do my best at work, looking forward to my trip next month.
Housewives are like parasites, aren't they?
Terry looks down on me, a full-time homemaker, at a family gathering. The relatives around us are giving Terry puzzled looks. But, oblivious to the atmosphere, Mary loudly laughs and retorts.
Oh wow, that sounds almost like being jobless or without any direction.
Indeed, I don't have a job. But that's only because Terry wanted it that way. I grit my teeth in frustration. Enjoying my discomfort, Terry says with a sneer, "Why don't you just quit being a full-time homemaker and get a job? Though I doubt someone incompetent like you could manage."
Hey, Dad. It's mean to say the truth like that.
Mary laughs heartily, finding his words hilariously absurd. I've had enough of this husband and daughter.
Then I quit being a mother today. What?
After this, the two of them will face a desperate situation. My name is Millie Smith. I'm a 45-year-old full-time homemaker. I currently live with my husband, Terry, and his daughter, Mary. I met Terry at a dinner party hosted by an acquaintance. At that time, I was a nurse with no romantic prospects. Nursing is mostly women, and while there are more men in medicine, the competition is fierce. Usually, the beautiful senior nurses were the ones dating doctors. Someone with average looks like me didn't stand a chance. Plus, dating within the hospital seemed awkward if things didn't work out. So, I decided to seek relationships outside. Through an acquaintance, I was introduced to men. But it never went well. My job involved night shifts and working weekends. Maybe that's why I couldn't match schedules with most men. Because of that, my dating experiences always ended after just 1 or 2 dates. But Terry was different. Terry and I had many dates together. A big reason for this was his job. He worked in sales at a multinational cosmetics company. His work mostly involved dealings with department stores, and he worked regardless of weekends. As a result, Terry often had weekdays off, making it easier to match our schedules. Dating Terry was fun. Our dates were short, often just meals or karaoke, but they were always filled with laughter. I thought I'd be so happy if I could marry Terry. Then one day, out of the blue, he proposed to me. I was so happy I cried. Terry was concerned to see me crying, but when I said yes, he was overjoyed. After meeting my parents, all that was left was to make it official. That's when Terry told me he was divorced with a 10-year-old daughter, Mary. His ex-wife had suddenly left him. And it seems that led to a divorce eventually. He asked me to quit nursing and to be a full-time homemaker. As Mary was still in elementary school and needed care at home.
I'm really sorry, but I love you, Millie, and I want to be with you,
he said with a look of regret. Few women would agree to marry upon learning about a stepchild so late. That's probably why Terry waited so long to tell me. But I loved Terry, so I agreed with a smile. I really loved my job as a nurse and thought it was my calling, but there was no helping it. A new life with the man I loved. I was looking forward to our married life together. For 10 years, I supported Terry and Mary as a full-time homemaker. To outsiders, our family might seem ideal. A family of 3 living in a house with a yard. As the wife, I'm a full-time homemaker. Terry works at a multinational corporation, and we seem to have a comfortable life financially. But reality was different. After we got married, Terry stopped seeing me as a woman. I felt more like a housekeeper to him. One morning, just after we'd married, Terry sat at the dining table, silent and seemingly sleepy. "Good morning. Breakfast's ready," I said, setting the meal on the table. It was when I was placing scrambled eggs, salad, and bacon on a plate with toast. Suddenly, Terry said, "Hold on," stopping me in my tracks. "What's wrong?" I asked, surprised by his sudden interjection. He looked at me with a twisted face, accusingly.
"Why are you serving bacon for breakfast? What if Mary gains weight because of that?"
I was taken aback by his remark. If it were a little kid, I'd think that concern is necessary. But Mary is already in the 4th grade. She can surely eat bacon no problem. So, I countered.
"Eating bacon occasionally isn't a big deal. It's not like we're vegans."
But Terry wasn't convinced. Instead, he looked at me with disgust.
"You're just being careless because Mary isn't your biological child, aren't you? Don't slack off, even if you are just a housewife."
He was raising his voice when Mary walked in, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Good morning." As soon as Terry saw her, his face lit up with a smile. "Good morning, Mary. You look cute today." Where did his earlier rudeness towards me go? I watched his quick change of attitude with a cold eye. The smile he no longer showed me, he now lavished entirely on Mary. Terry gently stroked Mary's face and talked to her. Mary, of course, was smiling all along. Then, after lavishing attention on Mary, Terry glared at me and said in a low voice,
"Anyway, for Mary's sake, make a chicken dish now. And make sure it's tender, good quality chicken. If you cut corners like this again, I won't forgive you."
Terry said that and then threw the bacon I had cooked into the trash can. I was terribly shaken by this sudden event.
"What are you doing? That's such a waste."
I protested, but Terry just glared at me. He even started yelling at me loudly.
"Don't talk back, just a housewife. You're eating off my money. Your only response should be yes."
Mary looked at me with cold eyes. I was scolded continuously until Terry was satisfied. I had no allies here. "Yes," I replied, biting back my frustration. Terry's behavior had made Mary increasingly brazen. She took it for granted to order me around. And threw tantrums if I didn't comply. Telling Terry would only make matters worse, so I couldn't speak firmly to Mary. Now, 10 years have passed since we started living together, and Mary is already 20. She's a college student now, but dumps all her personal chores on me. Today, she came back from college saying, "I'm home," and just left her coat and socks in the entrance. Not bothering to pick them up. "Hey, can you please put your laundry in the basket?" I hurriedly picked up her scattered clothes, pleading desperately. Mary carelessly left her rain-soaked clothes lying around. If I don't pick them up and wash them quickly, they'll start to smell. And the floor will get damp, which is the worst. But Mary just said lazily,
"Ugh, why don't you just do it? You're a housewife, that's your job, right? It's not like you have anything else to do, you're free anyway."
Saying this, she went to change into her house clothes, leaving more clothes strewn about. Mary then casually opened the fridge and started drinking a 1L carton of juice.
"This is really troublesome,"
I muttered to myself. Mary has no sense of femininity. Her actions are clumsy, and she leaves the empty carton as is, not even bothering to put it back in the fridge. Even though there's still some left. As I stood there perplexed, Terry came home.
"I'm home. What's all this fuss about?"
He looked puzzled. Mary ran to Terry with a smile. And then she uttered a devilish remark.
"Dad. She's harassing me,"
she said, pointing at me.
"What?"
Terry glared at me. I, exasperated by Mary's attitude, explained.
"I just asked Mary to at least put her clothes in the laundry basket after she scattered them around."
I thought that was a simple enough task, something even a grade schooler could do. I shouldn't be asking for anything too difficult. But the moment I said that, Terry let out a heavy sigh.
"You should be able to handle that much. You're pointless as a housewife if you can't even manage the household properly,"
he said, blaming me one-sidedly. To Terry, I seemed incompetent because I couldn't provide 100% support for Mary's lifestyle.
"That's not fair,"
I whispered in shock. Why should I have to coddle Mary, a college student, like a toddler? I certainly didn't agree with that. Mary hid behind Terry, smirking triumphantly at me.
"Just do everything yourself. From now on, be proactive and get things done before I even have to say anything,"
Terry instructed me. After that, both of them returned to their respective rooms.
"I'm exhausted."
Alone, I felt all my energy drain away. Lately, Mary has been imitating Terry's attitude towards me, always looking down on me. This doesn't help in feeling any affection for her. I always think I should raise her as if she were my own daughter, but with her acting this way, it's tough. It's hard even with a blood connection. Terry, who I thought loved me, doesn't show any affection towards me either. I'm always treated like a housekeeper. Since we got married, he only smiles at Mary.
Am I really okay with this?
I whispered to myself while picking up the clothes Mary had strewn around. Amidst this, Terry suddenly told me. This Saturday, we have a family gathering at my parents' house. Make sure you prepare everything. I was bewildered by his announcement.
Saturday? That's the day after tomorrow. Why are you telling me this now?
Today is Thursday. I need to buy gifts for the in-laws and rearrange the plans I had for Saturday.
If you had told me at least a week in advance,
I said, but Terry just looked down on me with a smirk.
You're just a housewife, what important things could you possibly have? Unlike me and Mary, you don't have a job. Just hurry up and get ready.
With that, he left for work.
You've got to be kidding me.
I panicked at his words. On the day of the family gathering. Excuse us. I managed to prepare the gifts and visited Terry's parents' house with him and Mary.
Welcome. We've been waiting for you.
Terry's mother greeted us with a smile. Terry's father had passed away, and now his mother lived alone in their house. She's a kind woman, always telling me, "Do you need any help? I'm here if you ever need to talk." I would have liked to talk to Terry's mother about Terry and Mary's behavior, but I didn't want to burden her with unnecessary worries. So, I kept it to myself. By the time we arrived, other relatives of Terry's had already gathered. Terry's mother had ordered sushi for everyone, and the family gathering proceeded pleasantly. However, about an hour in, as everyone's drinks flowed, Terry, slightly tipsy, laughed and exclaimed,
"My wife, a full-time homemaker, doesn't want to work. She really costs a fortune."
He slammed his beer mug on the table.
Terry, what's gotten into you all of a sudden?
Terry's mother asked him, puzzled. The relatives looked at Terry in surprise.
Terry, have you had too much to drink? Here, have some water.
I offered him a cup of water. But he knocked it away forcefully. And he declared,
housewives are like parasites.
Terry was looking down on me, a full-time homemaker, at the family gathering with obvious contempt. His eyes clearly held contempt for me. The relatives around us were giving him puzzled looks. But Mary, seemingly oblivious to the atmosphere, laughed loudly and said,
"Oh wow, that sounds almost like being jobless or without any direction."
"Indeed, I don't work. But that's because Terry wanted it that way. And to properly care for Mary when she was in elementary school. He's been disregarding the past 10 years. Frustrated, I gritted my teeth. Terry, amused by my reaction, mockingly said, "Why don't you just quit being a full-time homemaker and get a job? Though, I doubt someone incompetent like you could manage." This, coming from the man who told me to quit my job. It's unbelievable. I wanted to continue my nursing career. After making me quit my job, it's been 10 years and now he flips the script like this. And on top of that, he calls me incompetent. It's just too malicious. Apparently realizing Terry's remark was out of line, his mother said, "Terry, enough is enough. How can you say Millie is incompetent?" She scolded him, and the relatives looked at Terry disapprovingly. But Terry seemed unfazed, laughing off, "Why is Mom angry? I'm just being strict with her because she gets carried away if I'm too kind. Mary is no different."
"Oh, come on, Dad. It's mean to tell the truth like that. I do think she's incompetent, though."
Mary burst into laughter, finding Terry's remark absurd. Terry's mother looked puzzled and upset at both Terry and Mary's behavior.
"That's terrible,"
she muttered quietly. And looked at me with concern. I softly told her, "Terry and Mary are always like this. Please don't worry about it." Then, my mother-in-law, turning pale, came over to apologize. I had intended to smooth things over, but it seems I only added fuel to the fire. She glared at Terry and Mary. But the two of them didn't seem to realize it at all. Terry and Mary showed no signs of remorse and continued to laugh uproariously. I've had enough of this husband and daughter. I gave Terry and Mary an ultimatum.
"Then I quit being a mother today."
"What?" The two looked at me, dumbfounded. This would lead them into a desperate situation. Mary, recovering first, burst out laughing.
"Hilarious. If you stop being a mom, what will be left for you?"
She laughed heartily. Terry, joining in Mary's mockery, looked down on me with a scornful laugh. "What are you gonna do quitting being a mom now?" Terry and Mary kept repeating terrible things to me. Their attitudes were unpleasant to watch. Terry's mother had been frowning and looking displeased since earlier. Her gaze towards her son and granddaughter was not one of affection. She probably despised their unreasonable behavior. The other relatives were also whispering and looking at Terry and Mary with discomfort. Nobody was laughing along with them. Oblivious to this, Terry and Mary continued to make condescending remarks about me.
"You've been unemployed for 10 years. Society doesn't need you anymore. That's the price for playing around at home all this time."
Terry sneered at me.
"Unlike me, who's young and has a future, you're just an old woman now."
"So sorry for you." Mary laughed mockingly. I felt humiliated. Silently, I clenched my fist. I've endured more than 10 years. I hoped to become a real family because I loved Terry and believed Mary and I could eventually bond as mother and daughter. I had believed so. But the reality was entirely different. Since we got married, Terry's attitude changed completely. He always treated me like a housekeeper, never even calling me by my name. Mary was the same. She was always commanding me, thinking of me as a convenient person to take care of her needs, never seeing me as a mother. I tried to treat Mary as my own child, pouring my love into her care. I never missed a school event and woke up early to make her favorite dishes for field trip lunches. Despite all this, Mary never thanked me once. Her usual response was, "You're just a housewife, isn't that normal? You should try harder, actually." Terry has never thanked me for anything either. "Who do you think you owe for being able to eat? You should be kneeling and thanking me." Terry always said that. In his eyes, those who work and earn money are superior, and it's just natural for me to do all the housework. He would often say, "You have it easy, staying at home all day." That's not a joke. From morning to night, I have so much to do: cleaning, laundry, cooking. Even when Terry and Mary were leisurely watching TV, I was always busy with household chores. To them, all my efforts were taken for granted. I was just a convenient existence for them. I don't want to live with these two anymore. It's time to move on. Amidst this bizarre atmosphere, I suddenly stood up. Terry and Mary were surprised to see me get up.
"What's this all of a sudden? You are startling me,"
Terry protested in a high-pitched voice. With a blank expression, I made my declaration right there.
"Then I'm quitting being a mother, so from now on, I'm a stranger to Terry and Mary. Goodbye."
I swiftly picked up my bag and headed out of my in-laws' house. The in-laws and relatives seemed confused, but no one tried to stop me. Terry started to panic.
"Wait! Are you going home?" "Yes, that's right. It's rude to leave a dinner party early, isn't it? And yet you're trying to go home first."
Mary looked at me in disbelief. What are these two even talking about?
"Huh? There's no way I'm going back to the house where I lived with you. I'm going to my parents' house,"
I replied, half in disbelief. I no longer want to live with these two. Terry then shouted in disbelief.
"What are you thinking? Going to your parents' house all of a sudden? What about the housework? Aren't you a full-time homemaker?"
Mary glared at me.
"Exactly. That's so unreasonable. What about my meals and taking care of me? You have to do it properly, or I'll be in trouble,"
Mary demanded, as if attacking me. Even now, they're only thinking of themselves. It's just unbelievable. I sighed lightly and replied,
"Why don't you take care of it yourselves? Anyway, I'm parasites, I'm leaving, bye-bye."
I waved my hand and left the place. Terry and Mary were shouting something behind me, but I ignored them. I won't be manipulated by them anymore. Let them regret it for the rest of their lives. Then, I quickly went back to the house we lived in and gathered only my valuables. I had said I wouldn't return, but I still had my clothes there. I only went back to pick up the essentials. I had to hurry before Terry and Mary returned. My belongings were few, just some clothes, so I quickly packed them into a duffel bag. Terry hardly ever spent money on me, so my personal items were limited. I left the house key in the mailbox. I won't be needing it anymore. Meanwhile, I kept receiving calls and numerous messages from Terry like, "You'll regret it when you come back," and "Come back to my parents' house right now." As if I would return to my in-laws' place. I had no intention of going back home either. After all, there was nothing to lose from divorcing Terry. I went straight to my parents' house. I had informed them beforehand, so my mother warmly welcomed me. My father also looked concerned. My real family is just these two people. I almost cried at my parents' kindness. So, I started my life at my parents' home. Life there was more comfortable than I thought. There were no Terry and Mary to command me around. No one criticized my cooking, and I didn't have to pick up after their messes. I could use my free time for job hunting and focusing on myself. I applied to several promising job openings. Being single now, I could even do night shifts. Shortly after, I received an interview invitation. I had been continuously ignoring calls and messages from Terry and Mary. By now, their house must be in chaos. And that's probably why they're contacting me. I won't help them now, not after everything. I firmly decided this and continued to ignore the incoming calls that kept coming. After 3 weeks, with my background as a nurse, I managed to secure a new job. It's a full-time position as a regular employee. There's some anxiety about coping with a 10-year gap. But I have no choice but to push through. I bolstered myself for the challenge. The night before my first day at the new job, my mother came to my room with a confused look. "What's wrong?" I asked. She hesitantly said, "Terry and Mary have come over. I can't just send them away, what should I do?" She was clearly troubled. I hadn't divorced Terry yet, so she was unsure how to deal with my legal husband. My father, concerned for me, offered, should I go and give them a piece of my mind? I didn't want to burden my parents any further. So I reluctantly answered, "I'll go." It was time to sever ties with Terry and Mary. I headed to the front door. Opening it, I found Terry and Mary outside the gate. "What do you want now?" I asked coldly. I had no intention of letting them into my parents' house. Even when Terry said, "Let us in, it's cold out here," I didn't open the gate. Instead, I added, "If you have something to say, say it here. Make it quick, please." Terry seemed a bit surprised by my non-compliant attitude. Then he sighed heavily. "How long do you plan to take it easy at your parents' house? We're in a mess back home." Terry started with insults as soon as he opened his mouth. He was clearly angry. He must think it's all my fault, not reflecting on his behavior. Mary also glared at me. "Yeah. It's all your fault. The house is a mess, and we have no clean clothes to wear. Hurry up and come back to take care of it." They told me it had been 3 weeks since I left. Terry and Mary apparently haven't been taking care of the house at all. Mary just leaves her clothes scattered everywhere. And hasn't even used the washing machine. Terry doesn't reprimand her. Instead, he seems to be contributing to the mess. As a result, the living room is filled with dirty clothes. Unbelievable. 2 adults and they let the house get into such a state. I muttered in disbelief. However, Terry reacted to my murmurs. "Laundry is your job, so I'm leaving it for you. Be grateful and wash it, will you?" "Exactly. Hurry up and do it. That's all you're good for, isn't it?" Mary added, laughing. I was appalled and speechless. How long do these two think they can order me around? But if I keep quiet, it's playing right into their hands. I won't allow that. I calmly countered. "Why would I do that? I'm divorcing Terry. A lawyer will contact you soon, so please make sure you handle the procedures properly." I spoke calmly. I determined not to be swayed by Terry and Mary anymore. But Terry seemed unsatisfied. "How can you divorce without any income? Someone incompetent like you will be in trouble very soon," he said, laughing loudly. Mary, still seemingly confident, told me. Being a real jobless person is bad, you know? Apologize to Dad quickly and come back home. We'll put you to work again." I didn't want to be at their mercy anymore. Besides, I have a job now. I smiled and rejected them. "I've already secured a new job, so don't worry about me. Maybe you should worry about living in a garbage house?" "What? You already got a job? That's too quick." Terry sounded frustrated. Mary felt the same. "I thought you'd be crying by now without a job. But look at you, acting all high and mighty." Mary clicked her tongue in frustration. Expecting my misery, they really are the worst kind of father and child. As I was thinking this, Mary, as if she had an idea, said, "You're my mother, right? So you can't just quit being a mother so easily. I'm still a student." She made a face as if she were the victim. But it's too late for that. Besides, Mary must know the truth. I smiled at Mary and spoke. "You know, don't you, Mary? That we're not related by blood. Once I divorce Terry, we'll no longer be family.
Ah,
Mary turned pale. As if she just realized it. Her mind seems quite naive. I'm not Mary's real mother. Her biological mother is someone else. That's why, after the divorce from Terry, Mary and I will be strangers. If Mary had shown me some affection, maybe I would have felt some motherly love for her. But to Mary, I was just a convenient housekeeper until the end. She always commanded me around, acting as if it was only natural for me to serve her. I don't want to be a mother in such a situation. Mary looked frustrated, but she couldn't think of any way out. She glared at me in silence. Terry seemed to realize my determination. And now that I had found a new job, there was no way to avoid the divorce. He looked at me resentfully. With nothing left to say, I bid them my final farewell.
goodbye. We'll never meet again.
Terry and Mary's faces contorted. They had planned to bring me back to do the housework, but their plan had failed. And with the divorce, they would have to accept that I would never do the housework for them again. They would have to return to their unkempt house alone. They must be filled with a sense of despair. Ignoring them, I closed the front door of my parents' house. Eventually, Terry and I got divorced. He was quite resistant at first, only saying, "We won't divorce. Everything will be back to normal once Millie returns home. Going back to being a housekeeper is out of the question." Through my lawyer, I conveyed that reconstruction was impossible and that if Terry continued to refuse the divorce, it would lead to a legal battle. Terry would surely be troubled by the idea of going to court. Eventually, he signed the divorce papers. As for what happened afterward, Terry quit his job. It turns out he is completely incapable of handling household chores. Not even doing laundry. He ended up wearing dirty clothes repeatedly. Naturally, this caused a stench at his workplace, and he was repeatedly warned by his superiors. Terry, having an oddly high pride, strongly resisted these warnings. And eventually resigned. However, even after quitting, he couldn't find a new job. Going to interviews without being able to take care of himself and smelling bad certainly didn't help. Mary could have done the laundry, even if Terry found it difficult. Both had become accustomed to doing nothing. There are coin laundries and housekeepers available, but they chose not to utilize these services. It's their responsibility. There's still a mortgage on the house and Mary's college fees to consider. If things continue like this, they're headed for a downfall. Once, Mary called me. I was reluctant to answer, but I did anyway. Yes? Mary immediately started talking.
Finally, you answered. The house is a mess, full of dirty, smelly clothes. Plus, Dad has no income since he quit his job.
I was disgusted that she was still trying to rely on someone else in this situation.
I'm a stranger to you now. Maybe ask your grandmother?
I suggested, sighing. But Mary, almost in tears, said,
Grandma has been distant since you left, and other relatives don't answer our calls. Please, help us.
My mother-in-law is a sensible person and was a homemaker herself. Moreover, many among our relatives are also homemakers. It's no surprise they distanced themselves from people who belittled homemakers. It's only natural to distance oneself from people who belittle homemakers. Don't call me again. Goodbye, I said and hung up the phone. I immediately blocked Mary's number. From now on, Terry and Mary will likely face increasing hardship. Without income, they won't be able to afford Mary's college fees. She'll probably have to drop out soon. But that's their fault for not doing any household work. Unaware of this, Terry and Mary will likely continue to struggle for the rest of their lives. It's been 3 years since then. My life has changed significantly. I've remarried. 6 months ago, I married a colleague from the same hospital. I never thought workplace romance was possible, but he was very proactive in his approach. And eventually, I gave in. He works as a nurse in a different ward. He is a dedicated and serious person. He had been single all his life and can do all the household chores. He even cooks better than I do, which is surprising. He always treats me as an individual. Asking things like, "Millie, how about fish for dinner tonight?" while checking the fridge. Terry never did anything and always complained about the food I cooked. He only saw me as a housekeeper. So, my husband's kindness means a lot to me. Nursing is tough, but we support each other and manage somehow. There might be many challenges ahead, but I believe we can overcome them together. Keep going. I'm determined.
I want a large room, about 200 square feet.
Emma exclaims, her enthusiasm met with a grumble from her stepbrother. While I was unpacking, catching the interaction between the two out of the corner of my eye, he called out to me in a teasing tone. "Hey, no complaining even if you're not happy. Remember, it's divorce if you oppose me." They're over the moon about their new house, oblivious to its secrets. Seeing their joy, I can't help but feel pity and decide to reveal the truth. My name is Mia Smith. I'm a 35-year-old illustrator. I have a twin sister. Her name is Charlotte. She, like me, is also an illustrator but also works as a manga artist. I work as an illustrator, and in the gaps between, I also take on another job. While the other job might technically be my main profession, my passion lies in illustration, so I often refer to that as my primary occupation. My twin sister, Charlotte, and I are identical in every way, from our faces to our figures. We're so alike that even our parents struggle to tell us apart. It was to the point where they'd get confused and frustrated, a perfect example of how identical we were. In the past, we used to exploit this similarity for pranks. We'd switch places for tests or trick adults by making them guess who was who. This lifestyle changed when our father scolded us severely.
You weren't born twins to make people feel bad.
He scolded us that we were scolded for being born to support each other, not to cause trouble, so we stopped doing things that would bother people. Seeing the sad faces of our father and mother at that time made us realize that we were truly doing something wrong. Since then, we've never used our identical appearance to hurt anyone. It's a sign that we've grown up. I'm single, while Charlotte is married. I'm cautious when it comes to seeing men as romantic prospects, but Charlotte has always been more inclined towards love. She has often been deceived by the wrong guys, turning to me for comfort. However, her current husband is a great guy and understands her personality and career and cares deeply for our family. His name is Jack Johnson. They met through a friend, and Charlotte fell for his sincerity and kindness. Jack has a daughter, Emma, from his previous marriage. He had to take her in after his ex-wife pushed her onto him. Initially, this made me feel uneasy. How do you feel about saying she was pushed onto you? Emma is your precious daughter, isn't she? You're right. She's more important to me than my own life. But Emma is a girl, and with my job requiring frequent travel, the house often ends up empty. Being a man, I thought she'd be better off with her mother. I figured it's better for her to feel loved by her mother than to be lonely with me. Back then, I wasn't confident about raising her on my own. As my brother-in-law spoke of his complex circumstances, his face contorted with emotion, I apologized. I had hurt him by speaking subjectively without fully understanding his family situation. I also apologized to Charlotte. I regretted asking unpleasant questions after she introduced me to her husband. However, they both forgave my rudeness. It's natural for you to be worried, Mia. You're concerned that Charlotte's husband might not be treating Emma right. Especially since Charlotte is such a kind-hearted person. You must have been worried she might fall for the wrong guy. She must have had her concerns too, but she never asked for details, probably not wanting to trouble him. Hearing our conversation today must have reassured you a bit, right? At first, I was worried just like you, Mia. But seeing Jack with Emma, all my worries disappeared. I know better than anyone how much he cares for her. Their laughter and happiness made me realize my meddling was unnecessary. They will be fine. They're strong together and can overcome anything. While I'm happy Charlotte found someone she can rely on, I can't help feeling a bit lonely. Charlotte, who used to come to me for everything, saying big sister, is no longer here. I feel like my role as an elder sister is over, leaving me with a sense of emptiness. But seeing Charlotte happy is what matters most to me. Feeling this sincerely, I implored him, please, take good care of Charlotte. In response, he promised, I will cherish her for life. We then chatted about casual things. Jack shared more about Emma and the circumstances of his divorce. His job kept him so busy that he couldn't be involved in household chores or childcare. Jack said that the inability to spend quality time together as a couple led to strains in our marriage, ultimately resulting in divorce. As I climbed the career ladder, I became more work-oriented, putting a lot of burden on my wife. He confessed, acknowledging that it was understandable why she left him. But when the conversation shifted to Emma, his face lit up with a father's pride. She might be a bit of a mischief maker, but she's essentially an honest, lovable child. I think you, Mia, would get along well with her. Saying this, my brother-in-law showed his doting parent side, which made me smile involuntarily. Seeing Jack's devotion to his family reassured me that he would take good care of Charlotte. If Charlotte is happy, that's all that matters to me. From then on, I decided not to interfere in their lives unnecessarily. That was until the day Charlotte came to me in tears. It was a day of heavy rain, so intense that the weather forecast had issued a flood warning. I didn't expect any visitors and was leisurely working at home when suddenly the doorbell rang. It wasn't a delivery, nor had our parents mentioned visiting. If it were Charlotte, she would have called in advance. Wondering who it could be on such a day, I cautiously checked the intercom and saw Charlotte, drenched in the rain. It's the first time that Charlotte, who usually contacts me in advance, has visited my house without any prior notice. I hurried to the door, and as soon as I opened it, Charlotte threw her arms around me.
Charlotte, what's wrong? You're soaking wet. Big sister, help me.
I was confused by her sudden emotional outburst in the entrance of my apartment. Living in an apartment complex, this was the entrance area. Understandably, loud crying could potentially disturb the neighbors. For starters, I invited a drenched Charlotte into my apartment, fetched a bath towel from the bathroom, and told her to wipe her face and body dry.
First, let's dry your hair. I'll also make you something warm to drink.
It had been ages since Charlotte had come to me like this, crying for help. This scene, so familiar from our childhood, had become rare over the years. Usually, when Charlotte was this distraught, it meant she was in a tough spot. Charlotte, who's not good at leaning on others, only seeks help when she's reached her limit. Was something wrong at home? While these worries grew in my heart, I first prepared to warm her up. After getting the bath ready and making sure she was warmed up, I called her out. She obediently followed me. She seemed more relaxed after the bath, returning to the living room where I placed a warm cup of coffee in front of her.
What happened? For you to come to my place without any notice, it must be something serious, right?
I gently asked Charlotte, who was calming down while sipping her coffee. At my words, tears welled up in her eyes again, but she held them back as she explained. Actually, Jack has been acting strange lately. Charlotte spoke with such seriousness, and upon closer inspection, her face appeared worn and exhausted. Since moving in with Jack, Charlotte had been juggling housework and her job. Emma was still a high school student and required a lot of attention. Charlotte works from home, and told she was left with almost all the household responsibilities. I knew I'd be taking care of the house because of his previous marriage, but he's been pushing all the housework onto me, and it's getting harder to manage my work. Charlotte, who has never raised a child before, seems to be having quite busy days. She's handling daily lunch preparations, washing sports uniforms, and getting school materials ready. But she initially tried to cope, thinking it's part of being a wife. However, the household chores asked by Jack and Emma kept increasing. At first, it was really just the typical household chores any wife would do. But gradually, it turned into preparing things for Jack's work, getting Emma ready for school, and it even escalated to running errands, giving massages, and being ordered around to fetch things. Both started to look down on her for working from home, with Jack even resorting to emotional abuse, saying, "I'm the one providing for you." Charlotte was told that as long as she didn't contribute financially, she had to obey Jack and Emma unconditionally. If Charlotte defied him, it'll mean immediate divorce. This way, they controlled her, pushing her into a corner. Emma seemed nice at first, but when Jack started treating me like this, she began to see me more like a servant. Charlotte described how Emma would complain about even minor things forgotten in her school preparation and continuously criticized the food. The only time she felt appreciated was in the first few days after their marriage. Overwhelmed by the unfairness, Charlotte asked Emma to do some things for herself, only to be met with cold stares and scolding. "Charlotte, you're just sitting at home with your remote work, right? I'm giving you tasks to do. Yet, how can you look so stressed? Dad's much busier and has it tougher. How can you even show a tired face? It's unbelievable. Aren't you being provided for by Dad?" That night, Emma reported this to Jack, and Charlotte faced his wrath. Since then, she never dared to ask Emma to do anything. Fearing that Jack would find out and mentally corner her further, Charlotte endured in silence. Our job as illustrators depends a lot on our mental state. Whether I can work effectively or not is greatly influenced by my mental state. When I'm mentally drained, there are times I can't draw anything for even a week. She confessed to me, in tears, that the constant scolding and fear had made her afraid to even pick up her brush. Unable to create satisfactory work, she felt she was letting her clients down. Since then, Charlotte had been enduring a life she feared would become unbearable. She continued to make lunches for Emma, which she didn't even want to make, and took care of Jack's work preparations, all the while trying to avoid any sort of conflict. She shared how she spent her days always on edge, trying not to anger Emma or Jack. But instead of gratitude, they began criticizing her work, adding to her misery.
Why is the lunchbox filled with just frozen food? I tell everyone at school that I make my own lunch. Charlotte, you need to help keep up this act. If they find out it's frozen food, I'll be embarrassed at school. Emma will be the odd one out. This dress shirt's collar is stretched. Can't you even iron properly? The previous wife would have done this perfectly. The Jack and Emma I knew before the marriage seemed like entirely different people. I had thought Emma was such a kind and sweet girl until she and Charlotte got together. But now, the reality was starkly different. It was almost like a fraud, and I couldn't hide my shock at the story. What should I do? I'm scared to be with them. I don't want to go back to that house. Charlotte clung to me, crying. I felt a surge of anger. It was unforgivable. Treating my dear sister this way, using her as a punching bag for stress relief, I just couldn't stand it. I gently hugged Charlotte, stroking her hair to comfort her. It's okay. I will definitely help you. I was determined to pull her away from Jack and protect her from those demons. But how? I pondered over how I could be of any help to Charlotte. That's when my eyes fell on an elementary school album. It reminded me of the time when we were scolded by Dad for mischief, right before our graduation, with photos of our pranks included. An idea struck me, and I proposed something unexpected to Charlotte. Remember the switcheroo we used to do in elementary school? Yeah, but why? Let's do it. You and I will switch places for a month. I'll live in that house as you, and you go to our parents' house, explain everything, and convince them. You want to end things with him, right? Are you serious? If Jack and Emma find out we've switched, who knows what they'll do to you? I'll be okay. There's no way they'll find out. But to do this, Charlotte, you need to be prepared. This will most likely lead to a divorce. Are you ready for that? Do you have the resolve to leave him? I advised Charlotte to think about herself for once. It was a sudden plan. She needed time to sort her feelings, and asked for some time to think and left. Even after returning home, Charlotte's life continued to be like hellish slavery, and it seemed her anger had reached its limit.
She later contacted me, wanting to go ahead with our plan. Since I had a major event in a month, the timing seemed perfect, so we decided to execute the plan. I'll take care of the rest. We swapped the essentials while Jack and Emma were out, and Charlotte went back to our parents' house. I proceeded to cancel my apartment lease, ready to start the switcheroo. Within a month, I planned to gather evidence to favor Charlotte in the divorce and show those two a piece of hell. They had hurt my dear sister. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. That night, the first incident happened.
What the hell is this with the bath?
Jack bellowed as I was having dinner with Emma. Jack always takes a shower as soon as he gets back from work. He used to instruct to have the shower running before he arrived home to warm up the bathroom. What? Leave the shower running? Isn't that a waste of water? His dissatisfaction with just a minor bath preparation mistake was beyond my comprehension.
What? Are you stupid? It's obvious that you should start the shower right before I get home to warm up the bathroom. How many times do I have to say I want to shower immediately when I get back? You're useless.
His words were harsher than I expected. Just for a small mistake in preparing the bath, Charlotte had been enduring such harsh treatment. And what did he mean by exactly? I had no idea when he would be home. While thinking this, I forced a smile and simply replied, "I'm sorry." "What's with you today? You're creeping me out," Emma remarked, suspicious of my demeanor. "Huh? You usually get scared and can't do anything when Dad yells at you. What's with that smile? It's really creepy." The crucial difference between Charlotte and me was apparent. Charlotte dislikes being scolded or seeing conflicts, being a peace lover. On the contrary, I have a fiery temperament and don't hesitate to confront, even men. I enjoy watching wrestling, cheer during soccer brawls. And I have dabbled in mixed martial arts. I couldn't comprehend being intimidated by a man like Jack. But Charlotte must have been trembling at even a slight reprimand. To convincingly impersonate her, I realized I needed to act more frightened. Hastily, I masked my confusion with a troubled smile and distractedly began to clear the dishes. "It's nothing, maybe you're just imagining things, Emma." I realized that I need to pretend to be frightened even if I don't feel it, as Emma is surprisingly observant. Jack seemed rather dim, so I might get through a month with him. But Emma could prove to be a challenge. I had Charlotte detail her daily routine, thoroughly simulating to become her. The more I learned, the more evident it became that Charlotte lived like a servant. Waking up at 5 a.m. to prepare lunches, sending them off. Squeezing in work during any free time, and hardly having any time for herself. Charlotte did all the shopping, and it was unthinkable for Jack or Emma to do any household chores. Charlotte would meticulously check Emma's belongings, finding and preparing everything she needed from her school prints. Since Emma always wants to shower first, Charlotte had to finish cleaning the bath and have it ready before Emma returned. Emma seems to be particular about cleanliness and is apparently very fussy when it comes to cleaning. The slightest bit of dust could lead to her yelling and complaining all day long. Jack would reprimand Charlotte if his beer wasn't chilled. And since their food preferences and meal times differed, she had to prepare separate meals. The one time she served a shared meal, both berated her. This lifestyle was unbearable for me. I'd have left within 3 days, but Charlotte endured it for a year. Why did she stay? It was because of our parents. Jack really takes care of our parents. He comes home with me every weekend when he's not on business trips and even wants to help them move into a nursing home since their health isn't great. I know our parents are grateful, so I thought if I just endured, no one else would get hurt. Jack, earning over $200,000, knew Charlotte cared for our aging parents in a cramped apartment. He offered to look after them in exchange for her compliance. Charlotte is kind. Given this situation, Charlotte couldn't refuse Jack's conditions, and he seemed to know this. Seeing how happy our parents are, I couldn't say anything. I couldn't admit I was suffering. Jack's method, akin to holding our parents hostage, revolted me. He knew Charlotte's character and exploited it, treating her like a puppet. I had always wondered why Jack could be so harsh with Charlotte and why Emma treated her like a servant. But now, understanding their dynamics, it was clear that the kind-hearted Charlotte couldn't possibly stand up to them. Everything made sense, and knowing the truth, I was shaking with anger. I will never forgive them. What? I muttered to myself, to which Charlotte, on the other end of the phone, gasped in surprise. Don't worry, Charlotte. I won't let those demons, who took advantage of your kindness, get away with this. Rest assured, I won't let you suffer any longer. I declared this as if to convince myself, determined to endure this hellish month for Charlotte. Driven by the sole desire to help Charlotte, I endured the harassment from Jack and Emma, and though I was physically and mentally exhausted from the anger, I somehow held on, looking forward to the big event that was scheduled for a month later. And finally, the awaited month passed. I never expected Charlotte would buy a house like this. Really, I wasn't counting on your property at all. I never even thought about buying a new house. They marveled as they unpacked the furniture. I smiled broadly at them. I wanted to surprise you too as a thank you for everything you do. Despite my sarcastic tone, the clueless pair didn't seem to notice. They were probably too captivated by the new, fully built house we were in. They were constantly looking around as they unpacked. I had signed the contract for this house before canceling my previous one, and naturally, I hadn't consulted them at all, which initially infuriated them. What do you mean you signed the contract without asking me, the head of the family? Where did you get the money for this?
If I knew we were building a new house, I would have wanted to be involved in the layout planning. I won't forgive you if it's not stylish.
Although they were initially furious about me acting independently, as soon as they saw the layout and the projected image of the house, their eyes lit up with excitement.
Wow, Charlotte, you have good taste. A backyard and a bathroom with a skylight to see the stars, that's so chic and amazing. The location isn't bad either, and it'll shorten my commute to work.
It was purely coincidental, not done for them. But if they wanted to misunderstand, it worked in my favor. I'm impressive, aren't I? I boasted with a sniff, feeling proud as I began the remaining work. They must have been shocked that Charlotte had such a significant amount of money. Jack, believing he had the financial upper hand, never bothered about her finances. He even told her to earn her own way for anything she needed, looking down on her income. They must be astounded that a woman they underestimated had such wealth. I could easily guess they might start plotting to get their hands on it. But I wouldn't let that happen. This was the end of their hellish treatment of Charlotte. Hiding my joy at finally being able to free Charlotte, I struggled to contain my elation. Meanwhile, Jack and Emma excitedly discussed room assignments.
I want a large room, about 200 square feet. Emma, that's not fair. I wanted that room too.
They mistook the house as their own, gleefully making plans. As I chuckled at them, they looked at me as if wondering what was going on. What's so funny all of a sudden? You're weird. Charlotte probably thinks it's strange for you to have that room, Dad. You just don't suit it, that's why she laughed, right? Nonsense.
Charlotte is my wife, she wouldn't dare defy me.
Remember, it's divorce if you do. Watching them laugh carelessly, I let out a loud laugh myself. You too, what exactly are you misunderstanding here? Huh? This is my house, not yours. What are you talking about? Have you finally lost your mind? I'm perfectly sane and not broken at all. I just don't understand why you two think you're living in this house. Why wouldn't we? I'm the husband and Emma is the daughter. It's only natural for us to live together. Huh? I'm single, who exactly have you been mistaking me for all this time? At that moment, they looked at each other, completely baffled by the situation. Just then, a car pulled up in front of the house, and out stepped Charlotte and our parents.
Sis, congratulations on your new house.
We've heard everything from Charlotte. Hello, Jack and Emma. That's Charlotte over there, this is Mia, isn't it? What is everyone talking about? Jack and Emma were completely perplexed, their faces a picture of comical confusion. They looked around at everyone, sweat beading on their foreheads. Our parents and Charlotte stared at them with cold, stern gazes, their eyes full of disapproval. I'm surprised Jack can't even recognize his own wife. No eye for women, huh? At that moment, I let my hair down and removed my glasses. I had been in disguise to make it less noticeable, but Charlotte and I had switched places. Standing next to Charlotte, I revealed a smug smile and disclosed everything that had happened to date. I'm Mia, and this is Charlotte. The person you've been living with this past month was me. Surprise. What? Jack exclaimed in shock. Emma, on the other hand, was still trying to comprehend the situation, standing there with her mouth agape. This house was built with my money for me and our parents. Charlotte consulted me a month ago about the issues with you two. That's when I proposed this switcheroo plan. They looked utterly ridiculous, and I couldn't help but smirk. Finally, I could speak my mind. There couldn't be a more satisfying moment than this. Jack, unlike the timid Charlotte, was clearly uncomfortable around me, a woman who is more assertive. He lacked the confidence to verbally spar with me, and he was intimidated by my background in martial arts. Now realizing who he had been dealing with, he visibly recoiled in fear. He was physically recoiling, distancing themselves from me. Really, you two have been doing as you please for this whole month, haven't you? I'm the type who pays back what's been done to me. Are you two prepared for that? Jack, who had always underestimated me, was now trembling in fear, clearly aware that he was no match for me. Contrasting Jack's fright, Emma, still not fully grasping the situation, began to snap back. Wait, why did you switch places without telling us? Isn't that illegal entry? It's no problem since I had Charlotte's permission. That house was under her contract, after all. Jack and Emma had moved into Charlotte's place. It was because it was more convenient for commuting and better suited for their needs than their own house. Can you not say such terrible things about illegal entry? The landlord gave permission. But how can you not discuss such important matters with your family? Do you even care that you're married to Dad? Exactly. You've invaded our privacy. Influenced by Emma's defiant attitude, Jack, though still fearful of me, tried to argue back. I fixed a sharp gaze on him and took out my phone to show them a video. If you're talking about invasion of privacy, what about all the human rights violations you've committed against me? I showed them footage secretly recorded by a hidden camera, capturing their numerous misdeeds. This included recordings of verbal abuse and even instances where they threw objects at me, barely missing. Realizing they were in a disadvantaged situation, they panicked. What? You've been secretly recording us? That's a crime. Don't be ridiculous. Charlotte set up these cameras for security in her own house. It's not illegal. But making such decisions without consulting us, how is that acceptable as a human being? You're one to talk about ethics. Hearing my brother-in-law's words, my anger exploded, and I raised my voice in a shout so fierce that it silenced both of them. After all the harassment you've put Charlotte through, how dare you speak so self-righteously? And Jack, you approached Charlotte only for our parents' inheritance, didn't you? The next video showed Jack and Emma smirking and talking when they thought I wasn't around. When are you going to divorce that woman? I wanted a younger, more beautiful mom. We have no choice. She's worthless, but her parents own that valuable land. I've checked with a real estate friend, just selling that parking lot will bring in a huge sum. Their target was our parents' inheritance, a property passed down from our grandparents, which our parents had managed and lived on. The inheritance from our parents came from our grandparents, and they had managed and lived in that property with care. However, since the house didn't have any accessibility features, it became hard for them to keep living there. So, they moved to a smaller apartment that was more suitable for just the two of them. I heard they're now renting out the house to a friend. To think there was such a deceitful intention behind that help, my parents said, outraged upon learning the truth. When they heard about the plan, they insisted on coming with Charlotte to confront them. "We've been grateful for your help, but to think you had such motives. We were underestimated. Fortunately, we never used the money you sent us." My father, coldly confronting Jack, placed a large bag in front of them. "This contains all the money you've sent us." "What?" Jack was shocked to see the money he had sent over time. "We've lived without touching that money, planning to return it upon our passing, as arranged with our lawyer friend." They were mindful of their uncertain health in the future. Considering their healthy lifespan, they had implored a lawyer acquaintance to take custody of their wills, updating them annually.
"How dare you treat our daughter this way? We'll never forgive you for hurting Charlotte."
Jack and Emma, intimidated and cornered by us, desperately looked for an escape. But there was none, and my mother, standing firmly at the door, blocked their way. "Where do you think you're going now? If you're thinking of going back to your house, it's pointless. We've already left your belongings outside, and Charlotte has cancelled the lease. There's no going back." "What? You threw our stuff out?" Hearing this, Jack and Emma pushed my mother aside from the entrance and rushed out the front door. They were dumbstruck by the sight of boxes piled up outside. "This is our family home. Why would we let outsiders' belongings inside? Unpacking your stuff was really helpful. Of course, it doesn't compare to the torture you've put us through this month. Thanks for playing right into our plan," I added sarcastically as Emma looked on, her face twisted in frustration. Realizing they had been completely outmaneuvered, they collapsed to the ground, frantically begging Charlotte for help.
"Charlotte, please! Help us! We have nowhere to go! If we have to sleep outside in this freezing winter, we might die."
It was January. The heart of winter in Alaska, where everything was buried in a silver world of snow. Sleeping outside was akin to willingly risking one's life. However, I was indifferent to their plight. "Why don't you build a snow hut and try to survive the cold?" While I taunted them with sarcastic remarks, they glared back as if to silence me. Their desperate situation seemed almost comical to me. Emma and Jack, realizing arguing with me was futile, turned to Charlotte, begging at her feet with tears in their eyes. Charlotte kept her face down, not looking at them, and refrained from speaking. She's inherently kind-hearted, unlike me. I worried if she had begun to sympathize with them or was having second thoughts. As I was consumed by a fleeting moment of doubt, I was just about to ask her what was wrong. Charlotte raised her head, broke free from their grasp, and confronted them with stern words.
"I want nothing to do with people like you anymore. We're getting a divorce. I've recorded everything, including the way you've treated me, and I'll be sure to claim a substantial alimony."
She was usually compliant, so her unexpected defiance left Jack and Emma speechless, surprised by her sudden strength. This was the first time she'd ever spoken back so harshly. Breathless with excitement, Charlotte seemed to surprise even herself. I couldn't help but laugh, feeling proud of her growth.
"Well said, Charlotte. Be prepared, you too. I won't forgive you for what you've done to my family. There's no apology that can make up for it."
My words crushed their last bit of resistance, leaving them in tears and a state of shock. Thus, Charlotte was successfully freed from Jack and his daughter. They tried to reach out to Charlotte for help, but my father turned them away at the door, and a lawyer we hired swiftly initiated the divorce process. Thanks to the excellent lawyer, the divorce and alimony claims were handled efficiently. Afterward, Jack and Emma were left without a place in the community. In a small town like ours, news travels fast, and their bad reputation spread quickly. Their bad reputation had spread throughout the neighborhood, and I heard from Charlotte that Emma was now infamous at school, labeled as a troublemaker, making it impossible for her to continue living in our town. Having successfully severed ties with them, we are now living happily and peacefully. Charlotte moved in with us and is thriving as a successful comic artist.